Chapter 1. It was dusk, and the clouds were as red as blood. In the wilderness, 2 black horses with wings galloped in the air, pulling a carriage behind them. The carriage shuttled through the mountains, creating a gust of wind. On the steps of the carriage sat a valiant-looking old man who wore armor. Although his hair was white, his eyes were like a tiger's and gave off an intimidating aura. In the carriage, there was a mother and son. The mother was young and beautiful. She wore a long dress with jewels and a hairpin with phoenix feathers, making her look like an empress. Her face was covered in tears. She hugged her son tightly, and her body trembled slightly. The son in her arms was only 2 years old. His face was exquisite, and he wore a golden robe. He looked like a porcelain doll. At this moment, the 2-year-old boy's eyes were dull. His eyes were filled with fear and unwillingness that did not belong to his age. "I've only reincarnated for 2 years, and I'm going to die again?" The 2-year-old boy roared in despair in his heart. In his previous life, he came from Earth and died young before he could enjoy life. The cause of death was that he stayed up all night on his keyboard. After reincarnating into this world that looked like Xianxia from ancient times, he still retained the memories of his previous life. Compared to his previous life, the difference between this life and his previous life was like heaven and earth. His father was the emperor of the great Zhou Empire, Emperor Yan of Zhou. Emperor Yan of Zhou was an immortal being. He controlled dozens of kingdoms, billions of people, and millions of soldiers. He swept across the northern wilderness region. His mother was one of Emperor Yan of Zhou's concubines. Her name was Lady Zhao Xian, and she was extremely favored. Even after she had a son, Emperor Yan of Zhou often went to her palace. Until a month ago, when Lady Zhao Xian's father was accused of rebelling, which enraged Emperor Yan of Zhou. Lady Zhao Xian pleaded for her father, claiming that she was wronged. However, the evidence was irrefutable, and Emperor Yan of Zhou banished her to the cold palace in a rage. 5 days ago, Lady Zhao Xian found out that the empress was planning to poison her, so she sought help from her sisters and escaped from the great Zhou imperial palace. During this period of time, Emperor Yan of Zhou visited other empires and would not return for a few months. If Lady Zhao Xian did not escape, she and her son, Zhou Xuanji, would die. Zhou Xuanji saw that his mother in this life was crying so pitifully, and his heart ached. He raised his little hand and touched Lady Zhao Xian's face. And said, "Mother, don't cry." The physique of the people in this world was much stronger than that of the people on earth. Zhou Xuanji, who was only 2 years old, could already speak. In order not to appear too shocking, Zhou Xuanji usually did not speak for too long. In the imperial palace, the tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. Hearing Zhou Xuanji's words, Lady Zhao Xian choked with sobs. "Your Highness, there is a large river in front that can flow into the desolate river. If we throw the little prince in there, he might have a chance of survival." The old general outside the carriage suddenly said in a solemn tone. "Throw him down?" Zhou Xuanji's body trembled. This old man was really ruthless. When Lady Zhao Xian heard this, she immediately took off a necklace from her neck. The pendant was a wooden bead. The wooden bead was only the size of a thumb and looked ordinary. She tied the necklace around Zhou Xuanji's neck and kissed his little face. She said, "My child, this wooden bead was born with you. It is also the symbol of your identity as a prince of Great Zhou. In the future, when His Majesty finds out the truth, he will send someone to look for you." After that, she pressed her right hand lightly on Zhou Xuanji's body. A translucent golden light appeared and enveloped Zhou Xuanji. She carried Zhou Xuanji out of the carriage and onto the platform. She looked down. Below them was a canyon that was hundreds of meters wide. The river flowed continuously, and the water splashed onto the rocks on both sides, splashing countless water droplets. If an ordinary person were to fall in, he would surely be smashed into pieces. Zhou Xuanji felt dizzy looking at it. He died suddenly in his previous life, and he was going to be smashed into pieces again in this life? I'm sorry. In my next life, if I can still be your mother, I will surely make it up to you, Lady Zhao Xian said softly. She had already wiped away the tears on her face, and she looked determined. After that, she threw Zhou Xuanji down. The little Zhou Xuanji spun in the air and looked up at Lady Zhao Xian. Their eyes met. There was no fear in Zhou Xuanji's eyes, but a deep reluctance. Lady Zhao Xian was stunned. This was not the look a 2-year-old child should have. She instinctively stretched out her hand and wanted to grab him. Plop! Zhou Xuanji, who was enveloped by the golden light, fell into the rapid river and disappeared. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Lady Zhao Xian pulled her hand back immediately and covered her chest. Tears flowed down from her eyes uncontrollably. She hated it. She hated herself for not fighting for it. If she could climb up with Emperor Yan of Zhou's favor, she might not have to face such a disaster today. Lady, don't worry. Back then, when the little prince was born, an auspicious sign descended from the heavens. A qilin came and circled above the royal palace. Even the heavenly teacher said that the little prince was extraordinary. He is not fated to die. Don't worry. The old general comforted her. Just when he finished speaking. Swoosh! An air-piercing sound came. A sharp arrow pierced through the old general's forehead. Blood splattered, and the 2 flying black horses neighed in fear. They turned around and ran immediately. Lady Zhao Xian was almost thrown off. She quickly grabbed the reins. In the river, Zhou Xuanji was enveloped by the golden light and was unharmed. Looking at the dead trees and rocks that flew past him, he felt terrible. Although Lady Zhao Xian had only raised him for 2 years and most of the time, she was still his biological mother. He sighed faintly and said, "If I have the power in the future, I will surely take revenge for you." It was extremely difficult to take revenge on the Empress of the Great Zhou Empire. This world was like a mythical world. Cultivation was the mainstream, and the powerful were respected. Just the royal guards alone had the power to split mountains and rivers. He was only 2 years old and had no contact with cultivation. How could he take revenge? At this moment, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He looked down and saw that the necklace that Lady Zhao Xian gave him had disappeared. A red mark appeared on his fair chest. Ding! Supreme Legendary Sword System activated. Ding! Supreme Legendary Sword System successfully integrated with the sword owner's soul. Ding! Gacha for the new sword owner begins. Ding! Congratulations, the sword owner obtained, Silver, Crimson Dragon Sword, White Crane Sword Technique. 4 electronic-like voices resounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind, shaking him so much that his soul was knocked out. Before he could react, he felt an explosion in his mind, and he fainted immediately. Blue sky, white clouds, green mountains, and clear waters. Among the mountains, rivers weaved in and out. Beside one of the rivers, a little girl with a ponytail was washing clothes. She wore patched clothes. The little girl had fair skin and a cute face. She looked to be only 6 or 7 years old, and the washing board was even bigger than her. She rolled up her sleeves and wiped the water off her face with the back of her hand. At this moment, a golden ball of light floated over from the river and attracted the little girl's attention. She was a little stunned. She put down the clothes in her hands and walked over carefully. The golden ball of light quickly reached the riverbank. She walked closer and saw a child inside. He was only about 2 years old. He was very small, and his fists were tightly clenched. He was sleeping soundly. The golden light disappeared suddenly, and the 2-year-old child sank into the river. She was so frightened that she quickly ran over and picked him up. Chapter 2. After an unknown period of time, Zhou Xuanji's consciousness gradually recovered. He opened his eyes, and memories flooded into his mind like a tidal wave, giving him a splitting headache. He propped up his small body and found himself sitting on a wooden bed. There was a pile of clothes beside the bed. This was a small wooden hut that could only accommodate a wooden bed and a wooden table. On the wooden table, there was a kettle and 2 porcelain bowls with broken corners. Apart from that, there was nothing else. Outside the door was surrounded by green trees, and one could vaguely see the forest in the distance. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and asked in his heart, "Supreme Legendary Sword System?" He could still remember what happened before he fainted. Could it be that God had given him a golden finger? In his previous life, he had read many novels, so he naturally understood the system. It was like playing a single-player game. Meanwhile, he felt that the word Supreme God's Sword were somewhat familiar. I seem to have heard of it somewhere. "Sword Master, what's your order?" An electronic voice rang in his mind. Where did the Supreme Legendary Sword System come from? What functions does it have? Zhou Xuanji continued to ask in his heart, unable to suppress the anticipation on his face. The Supreme Legendary Sword System is a fortuitous encounter. At the beginning of the primordial world, there were already 3,000 rules. These 3,000 rules later became the Great Tao, and beyond the 3,000 rules, there is another variable, also known as a fortuitous encounter. The fortuitous opportunity of the primordial world is attached to the Sword Master's body, simulating the Supreme Legendary Sword program that the Sword Master created in his previous life. You can call me the Sword Spirit. I don't have an independent consciousness. I'm just a supporting program that you created to focus on nurturing the Sword Master. The electronic voice replied, which stunned Zhou Xuanji. F***ck me. So that was how it was. After coming back to his senses, Zhou Xuanji immediately became excited. In his previous life, he was a programmer. When he was playing a Xianxia standalone game, he felt that it was too difficult to level up and become stronger, so he created the Supreme Legendary Sword program. Well, this was the Goldfinger program. He could randomly draw all the swords in the game because he was playing as a blade master. Not only that, any sword art would be able to reach the maximum level as long as it was executed repeatedly according to the sword moves. There was no need for comprehension or special materials. Now that the Supreme Legendary Sword program had become real and had become a system, didn't that mean that he was going to soar into the sky? At this moment, lines of words that only he could see appeared in front of him. Sword Owner, Zhou Xuanji Race, Great Zhou Royal Bloodline Cultivation, Mediocre Martial Arts, None Sword Art, None, Supernatural Power, None, Sword, Silver, Crimson Dragon Sword, this is my attribute? Wait a minute. What was the silver in front of the Crimson Dragon Sword? Zhou Xuanji squinted his eyes in confusion. Although the Supreme Legendary Sword System is created from your Supreme Legendary Sword program, it has created countless legendary swords on its own, and they are divided into different grades. For now, the grades that can be announced to the sword owner are Ordinary Rock, Iron, Bronze, Silver, Gold, Amethyst, and Glorious Gold. The grades above cannot be announced for now because the sword owner is too weak. The Sword Spirit explained, which made Zhou Xuanji swallow his saliva. It sounded very powerful. What kind of artifact was the silver-ranked Crimson Dragon Sword? Wait a minute. Where is my Crimson Dragon Sword? Just when Zhou Xuanji was thinking, a sword appeared in front of him and levitated above the bed. It was the Crimson Dragon Sword. The Crimson Dragon Sword was 4 feet long, which was equivalent to about 1.3 meters. Its entire body was crimson red, and there was a long dragon engraved in the center of the blade, while the end of the sword hilt was in the shape of a dragon's tooth. With this sword, Zhou Xuanji's eyes brightened. So cool. Lines of words that only he could see appeared before his eyes. Sword name, Crimson Dragon Sword, level, silver, description, silver divine sword contains the soul of a crimson dragon. When activated, its might will increase greatly. He could not remember if there was a crimson dragon sword in the Supreme Legendary Sword program in his previous life. After all, the game's information was vast. He realized that the Crimson Dragon Sword was like one of his arms. With just a thought, the Crimson Dragon Sword would fly to wherever he wanted. It was really magical. How do I hide it? Zhou Xuanji mumbled. A 2-year-old child could not even protect such a precious sword. Just when he finished speaking, the Crimson Dragon Sword disappeared. The system has the supreme storage, which can store all kinds of resources, except for living creatures. It is like a storage bag, with an independent space. The sword spirit replied, which made Zhou Xuanji sigh in amazement. So convenient. Do you want to inherit the White Crane Sword technique? Of course. Zhou Xuanji replied without hesitation. To take revenge, he had to become more powerful. As a prince of the great Zhou Empire, Zhou Xuanji had heard of the cultivation stages. From low to high, they were qi nurturing, foundation building, enlightening, inner pellet, soul fountain, astral infant, astral projection, spirit refinement, and great realization. Each stage was divided into 10 levels. His father, Emperor Yan of Zhou, was at the great realization stage. His lifespan was continuous, and he was almost immortal. The continent he was in was called the Northern Wilderness region. There were many sects and kingdoms, and above the kingdoms were the empires. There were 7 empires in the eastern domain, and Great Zhou was considered to be above average. During its peak, it was ranked first. Without the Supreme Legendary Sword system, unless Zhou Xuanji was extremely lucky, it would be difficult for him to threaten Emperor Yan of Zhou, let alone come into contact with him. The ruler of an empire was not someone he could meet just because he wanted to. It was just like a land god, which mortals could only look up to. Next, a wave of memories entered his mind, and he could not help but close his eyes. In his mind, a silhouette was dancing with a sword. The silhouette was like a white crane, agile and graceful. After a long while, he finally managed to sort out this memory. The White Crane Sword technique was divided into 3 forms. The first form, White Crane Footing. The second form, White Crane Wings. The third form, White Crane Celestial Trace. Every form of the sword was imprinted in his mind. In this world, a swordsman had a high status because the sword was the king of all weapons. However, the way of the sword was very difficult to cultivate. Every sword technique with different grades required great comprehension. The same sword technique could be wielded differently by swordsmen with different comprehension abilities. But Zhou Xuanji had the Supreme Legendary Sword system. When he designed the Supreme Legendary Sword system, he created a shortcut for sword techniques. He only needed to practice the White Crane Sword technique 10 times to learn the first form. He needed to practice the second form 50 times, and the third form 100 times. One day was enough. Zhou Xuanji thought happily. But when he thought of Lady Zhao Xian, he felt depressed again. He did not know if Lady Zhao Xian was dead or alive. Even if she was alive, where could he find her in such a big world? My grandma is not here. You guys can come next time. A young girl's voice came from outside the wooden hut. Zhou Xuanji was so frightened that his body trembled. His personal stats disappeared as well. Don't tell me your grandma is running away from her debt. Tell her, within 3 months, she must pay her debt. Do you hear me? If she doesn't pay her debt, I will sell you to the brothel in town. A shrill female voice came. Zhou Xuanji could already imagine her mean and ugly old face. He quickly lay down. He was curious about who saved him, and at the same time, he was grateful. If he were to stay in the wilderness and be eaten by demons, it would be tragic. In the Eastern domain, other than the humans, the demons had a larger sphere of influence. Traces of demons could be found all over the human race. After a while, a little girl walked in. She lowered her head and rubbed her eyes. She was choking with sobs, and it was obvious that she was crying out of fear. She did not look at Zhou Xuanji but sat on the bench and cried loudly on the table. Chapter 3. Hearing Zhou Xuanji's voice, the little girl looked up at him. Zhou Xuanji was born in the royal family. His skin was white and tender, and his facial features were exquisite. Although he was only 2 years old, he could make most people like him. In the royal palace, he often acted cute and pitiful, which made the concubines in the harem fall in love with him. Of course, except for the empress. When that woman saw him, she did not hide her disgust at all. When the little girl saw his face, she immediately stopped crying. "You're awake?" She cried out in surprise and forgot about her grievances. She quickly poured water for Zhou Xuanji. Coming to the wooden bed, she held the bowl in her left hand and carried Zhou Xuanji with her right hand, feeding him water. Zhou Xuanji drank it all in one gulp, and his lips were covered with water. He giggled and said, "Big sister is so nice." The little girl giggled and asked, "What's your name?" "My name is Zhou Xuanji. I'm 2 years old this year." "What about you, sister?" Zhou Xuanji smiled. Facing a little girl, he was not worried that he would arouse her suspicions. "Zhou Xuanji? What a strange name." "I'm Jiang Shui, 6 years old." The little girl mumbled with her finger in her mouth. Zhou Xuanji sat on her lap, looked up, and asked, "Did you save me?" "Yes, where are your parents? Do they not want you anymore?" Little Jiang Shui nodded and asked. Zhou Xuanji replied, "They were eaten by demons." Lady Zhao Xian was most likely dead, and as for Emperor Yan of Zhou, Zhou Xuanji already treated him as dead. After knowing that Zhou Xuanji's parents were eaten by demons, although little Jiang Shui sympathized, she was not surprised. From time to time, people in the village would be eaten by demons when they went out to hunt. To her, this was nothing out of the ordinary. The two brats began to converse. Zhou Xuanji learned that the village was called Green River Village and was located in a corner of the Southern Snow Kingdom. The Southern Snow Dynasty was one of the subsidiary dynasties of the Great Zhou Dynasty. Little Jiang Shui had never seen her parents since she was young. She lived with her grandmother who was in her 60s. No one knew her grandmother's name, so the villagers called her Crazy Old Lady. Ever since she was 5 years old, the crazy old lady often went out and left her alone at home. At first, she was afraid, but later, she got used to it. It had to be said that the children in this world matured much earlier than those on Earth. It was worth mentioning that the crazy old woman would borrow money from time to time. As for what she did, no one knew. She owed a huge debt, and just now, someone came to collect the debt. He even said that he would sell her to a brothel. "Sister, I will protect you in the future," Zhou Xuanji said. Little Jiang Shui saved his life after all. Little Jiang Shui hugged Zhou Xuanji and smiled. She did not reply but mumbled, "Grandma has already left for half a month, will she not want me anymore?" Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji felt heartache. He patted his chest and said with a smile, "Your grandma left, and I'm here. Isn't this the will of the heavens? I can accompany you." Anyway, he had nowhere to go. If he went to the city, he might be caught, so he might as well stay in the mountain village. Little Jiang Shui heard him and immediately smiled. She pinched Zhou Xuanji's cheeks and giggled, "Okay, you are my little brother from now on." She was so young that she did not have her guard up against Zhou Xuanji. After all, Zhou Xuanji was so young. Sister. Zhou Xuanji called out sweetly. Seeing that his savior was so happy, he did not feel tired at all. What an adorable little girl. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji's stomach growled. Sister, I'm a little hungry. Zhou Xuanji said with a bitter face. Little Jiang Shui heard him and covered her mouth as she laughed. Big sister will go make porridge for you. After that, she let go of Zhou Xuanji and left the bed. Zhou Xuanji got off the bed as well. He wanted to test out the power of the Crimson Dragon Sword. When he arrived at the yard, he glanced around. The yard was not big, and there was a yellow dog and a group of chicks. There were a total of 3 wooden houses, one for living, one for the kitchen, and one for the toilet. After seeing little Jiang Shui walk into the kitchen, he quietly went to the back of the wooden house. Behind the wooden house was a small hill surrounded by woods. There was no one there. With a thought, the Crimson Dragon Sword appeared in his hand. The seemingly large Crimson Dragon Sword in his hand did not give him the slightest sense of weight, it was as light as a feather. He slashed at the mountain wall in front of him. Clang! The Crimson Dragon Sword easily cut into the mountain, making him feel as though he was cutting tofu. He slashed downwards and easily reached the bottom. Zhou Xuanji was overjoyed. This sharpness. It was not an exaggeration to say that they could cut through iron like mud. He was only 2 years old, and his strength was pitifully small. After he thought about it, he sheathed his sword and left. When he came to the yard, he hesitated for a while and walked toward the kitchen. He wanted to see how a 6-year-old girl cooked porridge. Would she burn the kitchen down? As he stepped over the threshold of the kitchen, he looked inside and saw little Jiang Shui standing on a stool in front of the stove. In her hand was an iron ladle that was completely disproportionate to her body size. Looking at her, it was obvious that she was already proficient in cooking, so proficient that it made one's heart ache. She seemed to feel that someone was looking at her, so she turned around. When she saw Zhou Xuanji standing at the door, she was stunned. Then, she placed her left hand on her waist and scolded like an adult, "Little brother Xuanji, go back to bed and rest. The porridge will be ready soon." Zhou Xuanji giggled, "Sister, let me start the fire for you." As he spoke, he walked toward the stove. "Don't. Go away, don't burn the house down." Little Jiang Shui quickly stopped him. She put down the ladle and jumped down from the stool to stop him. "Sister, don't worry, I've started a fire before," Zhou Xuanji said. "Will I believe you? You are only 2 years old." "I was still drooling when I was 2 years old." Little Jiang Shui snorted with her hands on her waist. Zhou Xuanji said helplessly, "But you are only 6 years old. To cook at 6 years old, it is really worrying. You also know that I'm 6. I'm not a 3-year-old, but you are worse than a 3-year-old. Little Jiang Shui still did not give in. He did not know whether to laugh or cry at her words. This girl had really entered the mode of an older sister. The more sensible she was, the less loved she was. Zhou Xuanji sighed faintly. He turned around and walked to the door. He sat on the stool and said obediently, "Then I will accompany you." Seeing how cute he was, little Jiang Shui could not help but walk over and rub his little face. She giggled, "Good boy, I will be done soon." After she rubbed his face a few times, she returned to the stove, satisfied. Zhou Xuanji looked at her and thought of Lady Zhao Xian again. He must find Lady Zhao Xian. If she was dead, he must see her corpse. Not only that, he must make the Empress of Great Zhou pay. When he thought about this, his eyes burned with fighting spirit. "Oh yeah, sword spirit, how can I obtain more legendary swords and energy techniques?" Zhou Xuanji asked in his heart. The White Crane sword technique was only a sword technique. He had not cultivated an energy technique yet. If he could cultivate spirit energy, the White Crane sword technique's power would increase tremendously. The sword owner will get a chance to draw a lottery every year when you grow older. The lottery must contain a legendary sword, and at the same time, you can randomly choose an energy technique, legendary sword, sword technique, divine ability, elixir, etc. Also, every time the sword owner breaks through to a new stage, you will also get a chance to draw a lottery, but there is no requirement to include a legendary sword, the sword spirit replied. A legendary sword every year? So casual? Chapter 4. A 6-year-old girl living alone and cooking for herself was pitiful. If Zhou Xuanji did not have the memories of his previous life, and he was little Jiang Shui, he would either starve to death or be scared to death. Thinking about this, Zhou Xuanji's heart ached for her, but at the same time, he admired her a little. This girl would definitely be a phoenix among men in the future. After little Jiang Shui was done cooking the porridge, she fed it to Zhou Xuanji personally. She even blew on it to cool it down before feeding him. It had to be said that little Jiang Shui's culinary skills were not bad. Zhou Xuanji, who was used to dining in the palace, actually felt that it was pretty good. Perhaps it was because he was too hungry. After all, how good could a 6-year-old's cooking be? After eating a bowl of porridge, he saw that it was still early, so he practiced his sword in the courtyard. He picked up a wooden stick and used it as a sword. After all, the Crimson Dragon sword had an extraordinary background, and he could not easily reveal it. He trusted little Jiang Shui, but he was also afraid that the villagers passing by would see them. He first practiced according to the first style of the White Crane sword technique. Only after practicing did he realize how difficult these movements were. He was only a 2-year-old child. It took him the time for an incense stick to burn to finish the first round. Little Jiang Shui walked out of the kitchen and saw what Zhou Xuanji was doing. She asked curiously, "Little brother, what are you doing? Practice swordsmanship?" A 2-year-old knows how to practice swordsmanship? In any case, she had never seen it. "Yes, after I master it, I'll be able to protect my sister," Zhou Xuanji replied casually. His words made little Jiang Shui's heart burst with joy. She said, "Then slow down, don't hurt yourself." After that, she got up and returned to the house to prepare some clothes for Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji continued to practice. After he practiced the first form of the White Crane sword technique 5 times, he realized that his body became lighter and even more powerful. It was really magical. When he finished practicing 10 times, he felt that his body's quality had multiplied. Somehow, he seemed to have understood something. Once again, he executed the White Crane stance effortlessly. It was as if he was an old swordsman who had practiced the sword for more than 10 years. The speed at which he drew and sheathed his sword was extremely fast. He continued to practice the second style, White Crane spreads its wings. It was dusk before he successfully practiced 50 times. He was already exhausted, but when he finished 50 times, the fatigue on his body immediately disappeared. He swung his fist, feeling full of strength. Every time Sword Master masters a sword technique, the sword spirit will help strengthen Sword Master's physique, allowing Sword Master to easily use this sword technique. Now, Sword Master's strength has reached the strength of an adult man. The sword spirit said, and Zhou Xuanji was overjoyed. A 2-year-old is already comparable to an adult man. I'm going to be like Neza. With the Supreme Legendary Sword system, he did not have to worry about crippling himself. He did not continue to practice. Instead, he went to the kitchen to help little Jiang Shui with cooking. After dinner, Zhou Xuanji continued to practice the third form of the White Crane sword technique, White Crane Celestial Trace. Little Jiang Shui sat on a small stool not far away and looked at him quietly. She had a silly smile on her face. With Zhou Xuanji's appearance, she was no longer afraid of the night. Today was definitely the happiest day in her life. Zhou Xuanji did not notice her expression but focused on training his sword. He practiced White Crane Celestial steps 100 times until late at night. When he completed the last movement for the 100th time, he felt a strange power flowing through his body. He felt that his physique had become stronger, and his strength was twice as strong as before. The power of two people. Zhou Xuanji was not surprised. He was in a state of epiphany. He closed his eyes and held a wooden stick in his right hand. Using the wooden stick as a sword, his figure flashed like a white crane, swift and agile. With a single step, he crossed several meters and swung the wooden stick at a big tree in the courtyard. Crack! The wooden branch was broken, but it left a 10-centimeter deep cut on the tree trunk. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and raised his brow. Without spirit energy, he could achieve such destructive power with the White Crane sword technique? He looked down at the remaining half of the wooden branch and pondered. When he used White Crane Celestial steps just now, he felt that he had become one with the wooden branch. Something seemed to be entwining around him. It was very comfortable. Could it be? Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes wide and looked shocked. That's right. You have already understood the White Crane sword will. There are thousands of sword techniques in the world, and each has its own sword will. When you become an adult, even without spirit energy, you can split a small mountain with your sword will. The sword spirit said suddenly, and Zhou Xuanji was a little dazed. He mastered the sword will just like that? According to his understanding, there were not many swordsmen who could master the sword will in this world. The most important thing was that he was only 2 years old. The supreme legendary sword system is really nature-defying. It's indeed a design that I created overnight. No, the sword owner is extremely talented in the way of the sword, or else the serendipity of the world would not have transformed into the supreme legendary sword system. The way of cultivation that suits you the most is the way of the sword. The sword spirit continued to explain, and Zhou Xuanji came to a sudden realization. He immediately thought of his father in this life, Emperor Yan of Zhou. Emperor Yan of Zhou's achievements in the way of the sword were unparalleled. He once killed an army of millions with one slash, and his name shook the world. As expected, dragons give birth to dragons, and phoenixes give birth to phoenixes. After he thought about it, he shook his head and turned around. He saw little Jiang Shui leaning against the door, asleep. Under the moonlight, her little face looked very peaceful. Silly girl. Zhou Xuanji said softly. He walked to the door and carried little Jiang Shui into the house. With the strength of 2 people, it was easy for him to carry a 6-year-old girl. After practicing the sword for an entire day, Zhou Xuanji was tired. He fell asleep immediately after he laid on the bed. Little Jiang Shui seemed to be tired. She turned around and pressed on top of him. If not for his strong physique, he would have fainted from her weight. He was only a 2-year-old child after all. The next morning, Zhou Xuanji changed into little Jiang Shui's clothes. His golden clothes would attract unwanted attention after all. Little Jiang Shui brought him around the village, so that the villagers could get to know him. Green River Village had a little more than 20 households, and 23 strong men. Usually, 5 or 6 of them would stay in the village to guard against demons or bandits. He wore little Jiang Shui's clothes and almost tripped every now and then. He looked very cute, and the villagers quickly fell in love with him. Little Jiang Shui told them about his background, which made the villagers sympathize with him even more. The people of Green River Village were simple and hospitable. Zhou Xuanji's arrival was not met with any rejection. In less than 7 days, everyone in the village had seen Zhou Xuanji. Although Zhou Xuanji had already mastered the White Crane sword technique to the pinnacle, he still spent time training his body every day. Most of his time was spent playing with little Jiang Shui in the mountains. Demons rarely appeared in this area. For hundreds of years, almost all the demons in this area had been hunted. Occasionally, some demons would accidentally barge in, but most of the time, it was safe. In the blink of an eye. 3 months passed. On this day, an uninvited guest arrived. A middle-aged woman with a face full of pockmarks came to the courtyard with 2 strong men. She was plump, and just her face alone made people feel that she was mean. She placed her left hand on her hip and fanned herself with her right hand. She shouted at the top of her voice, "Little girl. Your grandma is not back yet. Come with me and pay your grandma's debt." More than 20 villagers surrounded the courtyard. There were both men and women, and they were all here to support little Jiang Shui. Chapter 5. This is too inhumane. Jiang Shui is only 6 years old. Yeah, what's the point of bullying a child? If you dare, go find the crazy old woman. You dare to take revenge on a child? The villagers condemned, but no one dared to chase the middle-aged woman out. This was because the woman's name was Shenhua. She was a collateral descendant of a powerful family in a nearby town. Offending her was equivalent to offending that family. Shenhua was furious. She turned around and roared, "It's only right that you pay what you owe. If you don't like it, go to the Fang family and demand justice." The Fang family. The cultivation family of 4 Mystery Town controlled all the gambling dens and brothels in the town. Even the mayor did not dare to offend them. At least 30 villages like Green River Village were controlled by 4 Mystery Town. If they offended 4 Mystery Town, the Fang family could isolate Green River Village from the outside world with just a word, and they would not be able to trade. Even though Shenhua was only a collateral descendant of the Fang family and did not have much say, the Fang family's deterrence was too great. The 2 muscular men behind Shenhua were both cultivators. Although they had only just entered the qi nurturing stage, they were still stronger than ordinary martial artists. Just by standing there, they gave people a great sense of oppression. At this moment, little Jiang Shui walked out of the house. Her face was full of fear. Although she did not know what a brothel was, the women in the village said that it was a devil's den. To prevent Zhou Xuanji from getting involved, she reminded him a few times not to come out. "My grandma will come back after a while. She will not leave me behind." "You guys," little Jiang Shui said cautiously, like a frightened rabbit. But before she could finish her sentence, Shenhua interrupted her rudely and cursed, "I have already given you 3 months. Do you really think I'm the Bodhisattva? Take her away." "Yes." The muscular man behind her walked toward little Jiang Shui. Little Jiang Shui was so frightened that she instinctively stepped back and almost fell to the ground. She was only 6 years old after all. But just when she was about to fall, a small body caught her. It was Zhou Xuanji. He helped her up and pulled her behind him. He stared at Shenhua and scolded, "Fat woman. Appearance really comes from the heart. No wonder you are so ugly. Your heart is too evil." As soon as he said this, the burly man who was walking over was stunned and stopped in his tracks. Shenhua's expression changed drastically. The villagers were also stunned. Are these the words of a 2-year-old? Beat him to death. Shenhua yelled at the top of her lungs. She was so angry that the fat on her body was trembling. Having heard him, the muscular man immediately walked toward Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji laughed disdainfully. The crimson dragon sword appeared in front of him out of nowhere, and the tip of the sword pointed straight ahead. Xiao. Puchi. The muscular man's chest was pierced by the scarlet dragon sword, and the scarlet dragon sword pierced through Shenhua's chest. 1 sword, 2 lives. The remaining strong man was so frightened that he quickly turned around and ran away. Whoosh! The villagers were so scared that they collectively retreated. All of them looked as if they had seen a ghost. With a thought, Zhou Xuanji's crimson dragon sword flew swiftly and beheaded the fleeing muscular man. As someone who had lived 2 lives and was hunted by the Empress, Zhou Xuanji understood the principle of eliminating the source of trouble. Although he did not have spiritual power, the crimson dragon sword had already fused with him, and wherever he pointed, it would hit. The speed of a silver-grade divine sword was not something a minion who had just entered the qi-nourishing stage could handle. It was the first time that little Jiang Shui saw a dead person with her own eyes. She was so frightened that she covered her eyes. Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and said to the villagers, "Everyone, if you do not want Green River Village to be implicated, you should understand that this matter cannot be spread." The villagers looked at him in fear and retreated. No one replied. Demon. Definitely a demon. He dared to kill at only 2 years old. He was completely different from the cute kids they usually saw. And that sword, it was definitely a demonic sword, a demonic sword. Zhou Xuanji saw their expressions and could not help but shake his head. He walked toward the 3 corpses on the ground and searched them. Finally, he found 3 bags of money and put them into the supreme storage. From now on, he could not stay in Green River Village any longer. He could only travel the world if he had money. "Can you help me take care of this?" Zhou Xuanji asked. The villagers heard him and immediately fled in all directions. He sighed. The crimson dragon sword flew in front of him and disappeared. Shortly after, he turned around and walked toward little Jiang Shui. Little Jiang Shui opened her hands and looked through the gaps between her fingers. When she saw Zhou Xuanji walking toward her, she burst into tears and hugged him. Zhou Xuanji patted her back and comforted her, don't be afraid, I'm here." He thought that after seeing him kill people, little Jiang Shui would stay away from him, but it was the opposite. This moved him a little. She really treated him as her little brother from the bottom of her heart. After comforting her for a while, little Jiang Shui finally calmed down. She asked anxiously, "Little brother, if you kill them, the soldiers will come and arrest you." "Soldiers?" Zhou Xuanji snorted and burst into laughter. Although the great Zhou Empire controlled dozens of kingdoms, and the kingdoms controlled many cities, and there were countless villages and towns under the cities, the soldiers did not exert much pressure. Especially in the borderlands. After all, this was a world of cultivation, where the strong ruled. As long as you were strong enough, no matter how many sins you committed, there would be countless factions trying to rope you in. Compared to Earth, this world was undoubtedly much crueler. Zhou Xuanji asked seriously, "Next, we need to escape. Are you coming with me?" For him, the most important task now was to survive. As he grew older, he would definitely become more powerful. Only when he was powerful enough could he go to places with many people. Escape? But if Grandma comes back? Little Jiang Shui hesitated. Although the crazy old woman did not take responsibility for her, she was her only family. No, now she had another family member. Zhou Xuanji said, "Sister, if we don't leave and get caught, won't we be adding more trouble to your grandma? If something happens to you, she will be so sad." He smiled on the surface, but in his heart, he was cursing the crazy old woman. He could have enjoyed a happy childhood in Green River Village, but all this happened because of the crazy old woman's messy debts. And when he thought of little Jiang Shui's mumbling in her sleep, he was even more displeased. This old woman is as despicable as Emperor Yan of Zhou. Little Jiang Shui thought about it and nodded, "Wait for me, I will go pack up." After that, she purposely did not look at the 3 corpses and returned to the wooden hut. "Sword Spirit, can I put the entire house into the supreme storage?" Zhou Xuanji stared at the wooden hut they lived in and asked. After living here for 3 months, he had developed feelings for this house. Next, he planned to hide in the mountains for a few years. It would be even better if he had a house. Sure. The sword spirit replied, which made Zhou Xuanji happy. Sister. Stop packing. Come out. Zhou Xuanji shouted. Having heard him, little Jiang Shui, who had just entered the house, walked out again. She asked curiously, why? Not escaping anymore? Zhou Xuanji held her little hand and instructed in his mind, sword spirit, store the house. Before little Jiang Shui's eyes, the wooden hut disappeared into thin air. She was so frightened that she shuddered. Chapter 6. After taking away their wooden hut, Zhou Xuanji went to the kitchen to take away the pots and pans, as well as the food. Throughout the whole process, little Jiang Shui seemed very excited. She was amazed and excited that her brother could use magic. The legend of the immortal cultivators was also passed down in Green River Village. So her younger brother was also a cultivator. No wonder he looked so cute. He was completely different from the other children in the village. He was like a lotus flower in a swamp. After cleaning up for a while, the two of them walked around the corpses and headed towards the back of the mountain. Green River Village was located halfway up the mountain, surrounded by green mountains and clear waters. There were no other villages within a radius of 50 miles. Zhou Xuanji was heading far away from the village. He could rely on the Crimson Dragon sword to stay and not be afraid of the Fang clan, but he was worried that things would get out of hand. He knew how terrifying the generals of the great Zhou dynasty were. Overturning mountains and seas was nothing difficult for them. It would be bad if he was discovered by the minions of the great Zhou Empress. It wasn't easy for him to survive the calamity. He didn't want to capsize because of carelessness. When he came of age, no. If he was given 10 years, he might be able to rise to power. At the very least, he would be able to protect himself. After entering the forest, Zhou Xuanji took out his Crimson Dragon sword in case of danger. With a sword in his right hand and little Jiang Shui's hand in his left, the two of them strolled into the deep mountains. Little Jiang Shui had never left Green River Village before. She was very nervous, but fortunately, Zhou Xuanji kept comforting her. For the next 3 days, they were on their way. They took turns to sleep under the tree at night and traveled during the day. To prevent any accidents, Zhou Xuanji asked the sword spirit to keep an eye on them. Although they encountered some jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards along the way, they posed no threat. Zhou Xuanji had the Crimson Dragon sword in his hand, and he was a swordsman who had comprehended the sword will, even though he was only 2 years old. After 3 days of traveling, they were now far away from Green River Village. On this day, they came to the cliff. The river beside them flowed down the cliff with great momentum. Standing at the edge of the cliff, they gazed into the distance with dull expressions. Behind the cliff was a forest, and 1,000 meters ahead was a mountain range that cut across the land. At this moment, there were 2 figures clashing in the air above the forest. A blue-robed old man and a black-robed youth. They flew in the air, as if they were not affected by gravity, and fought fiercely in the air. The blue-robed old man had white hair and a ruddy complexion. He held a long sword in his hand and looked like an immortal who had attained the Tao. The black-robed youth's long hair was messy, and his face was ferocious. His entire body was shrouded in black energy, and he held 2 curved blades in his hands. He looked like a demon. From a distance, it looked like a battle between good and evil. All kinds of spells fell one after another, blowing up the forest. Immortal cultivators. Zhou Xuanji's heart skipped a beat. Little Jiang Shui was shocked too. Cultivators who could fly in the air were at least at the inner pellet realm. Zhou Xuanji had not even stepped into the qi nurturing stage. Even with the Crimson Dragon sword, he might not be able to defeat an enlightening cultivator, let alone an inner pellet cultivator. Without thinking too much, he turned around and jogged away with little Jiang Shui. The two children didn't say a word along the way and soon disappeared into the forest. After running for 2 hours, they finally stopped to rest. For young children like them, it felt like their legs were about to break. "Sister, are you all right?" Zhou Xuanji asked as he panted. Along the way, little Jiang Shui did not cry or complain no matter how tired she was. Most of the time, if Zhou Xuanji did not stop, she would have fainted. "You are fine, of course I'm fine." Little Jiang Shui wiped her sweat and replied while panting. Zhou Xuanji felt sorry for her. He took out a water bottle from the supreme storage and passed it to her. Although he called her sister, in his heart, little Jiang Shui was like a younger sister. The two of them rested on the spot. They spoke very softly, for fear that the two cultivators would hear them. They rested for about 10 minutes. The two of them got up. Zhou Xuanji stored the Crimson Dragon sword into the supreme storage, and they supported each other as they walked forward. After walking for a while. Boom. In front of them, a silhouette fell from the sky and smashed onto the ground. Countless leaves danced in the air, and the trees around them shook. Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui were both shocked. They fixed their eyes on it, and a chill ran down their spines. It was the blue-robed old man from before. He was lying on the grass, covered in blood. His face was full of pain. Seeing him, Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui were so frightened that their bodies froze. The worst-case scenario had still happened. "Damn, we are so unlucky." Zhou Xuanji could not help but curse in his heart. He quickly pulled little Jiang Shui and turned around. Just when he turned around, he saw the man in black walking toward him with 2 curved blades stained with blood. "Xiao Bailey, it seems like you did not improve much in the past 10 years. The man in black laughed coldly and walked toward the blue-robed old man. Zhou Xuanji's hair stood on end. He pulled little Jiang Shui behind him and stepped back carefully. The man in black walked past him, and they were less than 2 meters apart. "What's happening? Why are my legs not listening to me? I can't run," Zhou Xuanji thought in fear. He had never faced such a situation before. It's a murderous aura. He wants to kill you, so he locked his murderous aura on you so that you cannot escape. The sword spirit said in his mind, and Zhou Xuanji clenched his left fist. He wanted to kill them. They were still kids. "Xiao Bailey, do you have any last wishes?" The man in black laughed sinisterly, his eyes full of mockery. As for Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui, he had already ignored them. He would deal with the 2 kids after he killed Xiao Bailey. Xiao Bailey wanted to stand up, but his bones were broken and he could not. "They are innocent. Let them go," Xiao Bailey gritted his teeth and said. He had already given up, but he could not bear to let the 2 kids be implicated. "Ha ha ha. You better take care of yourself first." The man in black mocked. Just when he finished speaking, the Crimson Dragon sword suddenly struck his head, and blood splattered all over the ground. An inner pellet cultivator, dead. Xiao Bailey opened his eyes wide, as though he had seen a ghost. Little Jiang Shui was also shocked by this horrifying scene. The Crimson Dragon sword flew into his hand. "Sword spirit, is he dead?" Zhou Xuanji asked in his heart. An inner pellet cultivator might not die so easily. "He's dead. He can't be more dead." After getting the sword spirit's answer, Zhou Xuanji immediately ran over and searched the man in black. Finally, he found a storage bag and a storage ring. He turned around and ran away with little Jiang Shui. "Wait!" Xiao Bailey quickly shouted, but Zhou Xuanji did not even look back and quickly disappeared into the depths of the forest. After a long while, Xiao Bailey muttered with a complicated expression, "A genius on Great Zhou's hero ranking board died just like that, died in the hands of a 2 or 3-year-old kid." Xiao Bailey, who was knowledgeable, was in a mess. His worldview was shattered into pieces. Zhou Xuanji's decisiveness and attack sent chills down his spine. But more than that, he was curious. Zhou Xuanji did not attack him, which meant that he was not a bad person. What a pity. Can't you save me before you leave? Chapter 7. After killing an inner pellet cultivator, Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui continued to flee. They were afraid that more cultivators would come after them. Using the Crimson Dragon sword this time made him mentally exhausted. He felt that his eyelids were heavy and that he would fall asleep at any moment. His opponent was an inner pellet cultivator after all. He was fully focused and flew on his sword at his fastest speed, which was a heavy burden on his mental energy. After traveling for less than 2 miles, Zhou Xuanji almost fell. Fortunately, little Jiang Shui caught him in time. "Little brother, are you okay? Do you want me to carry you?" Little Jiang Shui asked with concern. She felt sorry for him when she saw his haggard look. Zhou Xuanji waved his hand and said, "I'm fine. I can still carry you." He looked like a 2-year-old, but his soul was already mature. How could he let a 6-year-old girl carry him? He noticed that little Jiang Shui's legs were already trembling. She was obviously very tired. After traveling for another few hundred meters, Zhou Xuanji could not take it anymore and sat on the ground to rest. The evil cultivator was already dead, and Qiu Beili was severely injured. They would not be in danger for the time being. He could only comfort himself this way. Fortunately, Qiu Beili did not chase after them. After resting for a while and recovering their energy, they continued their journey. Half a month later, the two finally stopped. They were standing on the mountainside. There were few trees on the mountain slope above them, only rocks and weeds. At the foot of the mountain, there was a small river that meandered like a snake, following the mountains and forests to the end of the horizon. Zhou Xuanji took out the wooden hut from the supreme storage and smiled, "Let's settle down here." Little Jiang Shui was so happy that she jumped up and almost fell. Fortunately, Zhou Xuanji caught her in time. Along the way, with the white crane sword Will and the crimson dragon sword, the two did not encounter any danger. They could even hunt occasionally. Zhou Xuanji's battle prowess had also been trained, and it was no longer the same as before. Little Jiang Shui began to clean up the hut, while Zhou Xuanji wandered around and made sure that she was always in his sight. The mountain slope was 100 meters tall, and its back was against the forest. Looking from the top of the mountain, one could only see rolling hills in all directions. There was no sign of human habitation. Little Jiang Shui was agile. She ran to the top of the mountain after cleaning up. Her face was filled with excitement. She grabbed Zhou Xuanji's hand and urged, "Little brother, can you teach me sword techniques?" Zhou Xuanji had always been the one protecting her, which made her feel guilty. So, she wanted to learn the sword too. Previously, he didn't have a chance to do so, but now he did. Zhou Xuanji smiled helplessly and took out a wooden sword from the supreme storage. This was a piece of wood that he had cut along the way, and it was reserved for little Jiang Shui. The sword spirit had tested little Jiang Shui's talent in swordsmanship. She was mediocre and it would be difficult for her to achieve anything in swordsmanship. However, in order for her to have the ability to protect herself, Zhou Xuanji planned to teach her the white crane sword technique. With little Jiang Shui's talent, she would need 10 years to master the white crane sword technique. Zhou Xuanji was not worried. He was there to protect him anyway. Although little Jiang Shui's talent in the way of the sword was not ideal, she lived like a little adult. With her around, Zhou Xuanji could live a good life. Every time he saw little Jiang Shui taking care of him, he could not help but sigh. This world is really amazing. If it was on Earth, a 6-year-old girl walking alone would be worried by her parents. Perhaps it had something to do with the spiritual energy. Little Jiang Shui behaved like a 10-year-old child. It was still early, so the two of them ate some dry rations and continued to practice their swordsmanship. He practiced for 4 hours until dusk arrived. Little Jiang Shui memorized 7 moves. It was not a big improvement, but it made her very excited. Before the sky turned dark, the two of them entered the forest to collect firewood. After nightfall, they sat in front of the firewood and looked up at the starry sky. Little Jiang Shui cupped her cheeks in her hands and looked at the night sky. "Little brother, are we going to stay here forever?" Zhou Xuanji nibbled on a roasted rabbit leg and replied, "Don't worry. Give me 10 years. After 10 years, I will bring you back. By then, no one will dare to bully us." Every year he grew older, he would receive a legendary sword and a lottery. After 10 years, his power would surely grow by leaps and bounds. His goal was not to linger on. He wanted to go to the great Zhou royal palace for revenge. 10 years. Really? Little Jiang Shui asked in a daze. Loneliness and confusion were always easily awakened at night. Little Jiang Shui had been lonely since she was young, and her mind was precocious. It was inevitable that she would be like this. It might not even take 10 years. Zhou Xuanji nodded. It was a pity. There were many treasures in the storage ring and pouch left behind by the evil cultivator, but the energy techniques were all demonic techniques. The sword spirit did not allow him to cultivate them, so he could only walk the path of the sword. He did not want to go berserk, so he had not officially stepped onto the path of cultivation. When he was 3 years old, he hoped that he could get a cultivation technique from the lottery. Seeing that little Jiang Shui was in low spirits, Zhou Xuanji began to tell her jokes to make her forget her worries quickly. Under the night sky, her bell-like laughter resounded. And so, the two of them began to settle down on this hill. To commemorate this place, Zhou Xuanji named it Sword Emperor Slope. The wild beasts in this area were ferocious, and there were even demons. Fortunately, their levels were very low, like cultivators at the Qi nurturing stage, which belonged to the first stage of cultivation. The two of them practiced their sword techniques every day and hunted all over the mountain. Their days were not dull at all. Time flew by just like that. During this period, there was a huge rainstorm that destroyed the wooden hut and scared little Jiang Shui to tears. Zhou Xuanji used his body to shield her from the rain and brought her to a cave to hide from the rain. He comforted her continuously. Since then, little Jiang Shui did not treat him as her little brother, but as someone she could rely on. After the wooden hut was destroyed, Zhou Xuanji built a new one. A rainstorm like that was rarely seen even once in a few years. Moreover, this place was the most spacious. If they were in the forest, who knew how many poisonous insects and ferocious beasts would be hiding in the dark, ready to deal them a fatal blow. Half a year later. The sky had just brightened, and the sun slowly rose from the horizon. The sunlight swept across the continuous mountain forest. Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui were practicing their sword techniques on the mountain top. Zhou Xuanji's main purpose was to teach little Jiang Shui. After all, his white crane sword technique had already been perfected, and there was no need for him to practice it anymore. Analyze that the sword owner has reached 3 years old. Gotcha started. The sword spirit's voice suddenly resounded in his mind. His right hand trembled and stopped immediately. It's finally here. Day and night, he had been waiting for it. Finally. What's wrong? Little Jiang Shui asked, confused. She thought that he was not feeling well. Zhou Xuanji waved his hand and said, continue. I will think about how to teach you next. After that, he turned around. Buddha Tathagata, please bless me. I must get the cultivation technique. Zhou Xuanji prayed in his heart. Although the Crimson Dragon sword was powerful, it was difficult to unleash its true power without spirit energy. Ding! Congratulations, the sword owner obtained, bronze, frost wave sword, golden body incantation, Baron Bull strength pill. The sword spirit's voice resounded again, which stunned Zhou Xuanji. He ignored the frost wave sword and Baron Bull strength pill, which were one level lower than the crimson dragon sword. He focused on the golden body incantation. The name, what? Isn't this an energy technique for physical cultivation? Chapter 8. Although the golden body incantation is a body refining technique, it can be upgraded to the sword chi golden body incantation. The sword master can cultivate it. Some powerful swordsmen use their bodies to forge divine swords. The sword spirit explained, and Zhou Xuanji's anger disappeared immediately, replaced by anticipation. That's more like it. Soon after, the cultivation method of the golden body incantation turned into a memory that flowed into his mind. The golden body incantation was divided into 4 stages: internalizing chi to temper the body, iron bones, vital chi impact, and indestructible diamond. Although it was a body cultivator technique, it could also be used to absorb chi. Zhou Xuanji was very satisfied. He turned his attention to the frost wave sword. With a thought, the frost wave sword appeared in his hand. A chill drilled into his palm, causing his entire body to tremble. Even little Jiang Shui, who was practicing with her sword, suddenly felt a little cold. Zhou Xuanji's body blocked the hilt, so she could only see the blade. She thought it was the crimson dragon sword, so she did not take it to heart. The frost wave sword and the crimson dragon sword's blades were similar in length and width, but the blades were silver in color and emitted cold air. The hilt looked like it was made of ice crystals and was extremely gorgeous. Soon, 3 lines of words that only he could see appeared in front of him. Sword name, Frost Wave Sword level, bronze, description, created from a land of extreme cold. It contains 1,000 years of cold energy. There was very little information, but the 1,000-year frost chi made Zhou Xuanji think about it. The bronze-ranked frost wave sword might not be as powerful as the silver-ranked crimson dragon sword, but its attributes were different. He then took out the wild ox strength pills and stored them in a wooden bottle. There were a total of 3 pills. The wild ox strength pill is an extreme pill. After consuming it, one can obtain the brute strength of a wild ox. However, it also has a huge side effect. It is best for the current sword owner not to use it, or else he will be bedridden for a month. The sword spirit introduced, and Zhou Xuanji's body trembled when he heard it. Wouldn't he be dead after lying in bed for a month? Little Jiang Shui could not protect him in the wilderness. After that, he sat cross-legged in front of the cliff and began to cultivate the golden body incantation. He began to breathe according to the breathing method of the golden body incantation. There was spiritual energy in the world, and it was the foundation for all living things to become stronger. According to Earth's explanation, it was some kind of energy. The basic breathing technique relied on the mouth and nose, while the advanced breathing technique required all the pores in the body to breathe in and out the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It took him a full half an incense stick's time before he could feel the spiritual energy. Spiritual energy was hidden in the air and was different from other gases. Once inhaled, one would feel refreshed and refreshed. The contrast was very obvious. The first internalization of qi took half an incense stick's time, which was equivalent to 15 minutes. It was definitely not slow. Ordinary people needed days or even months. The genius of the royal family of Great Zhou, the 6th Prince Zhou, took an hour and was called a genius. Even Emperor Yan of Zhou was pleased. As he breathed in and out, his understanding of the golden body incantation became higher and higher. After 100 breaths, he directly mastered the first level of the golden body incantation, internalizing qi and tempering body. At the same time, his cultivation had stepped into the first level of the qi-nourishing stage. He had accumulated a lot of spiritual energy in his dantian. He was stunned and thought to himself, is it that easy to cultivate? Your bloodline talent is very strong, your soul power is very strong, and with the help of the supreme legendary sword system, it's only natural for you to be like this. The sword spirit explained. Zhou Xuanji blinked and asked, are energy techniques and sword techniques the same? It's more or less the same, but the martial arts have a strict requirement for one's cultivation level. For example, the second stage of the golden body incantation, Iron Bone, requires you to reach the fifth stage of the qi-nourishing stage. Zhou Xuanji was very pleased with the sword spirit's answer. With his talent, it was not difficult for him to reach the fifth stage of the qi-nourishing stage. Moreover, there were many spirit stones and spirit pills in the storage rings and bags of the 3 people he killed, which could help him in his cultivation. He did not teach the golden body incantation to little Jiang Shui, but it was not because he was selfish. It was because the golden body incantation could only take 2 paths. One was physical cultivation, and the other was sword cultivation. Physical cultivation was too difficult, and he could not bear to see little Jiang Shui covered in scars. As for sword cultivation, this girl had no talent. She would surely obtain other energy techniques in the future. After some thought, he decided to ask little Jiang Shui. When little Jiang Shui knew that she could cultivate, she was very excited. Even in Green River Village, there were legends of cultivators. She knew that the golden body incantation required her to temper her body in the future, so she immediately gave up. There were thousands of ways to temper one's body. In summary, it was to use external forces to temper one's body, such as lightning, huge waves, mountains, and so on. The process was extremely arduous. The higher one's cultivation stage, the fewer physical cultivators there were. A cultivator's first energy technique was very important. It could lay a solid foundation, which would affect the future. It was a good thing that little Jiang Shui did not cultivate. Sister, don't be disappointed. I will help you find a suitable cultivation technique for you in the future. Zhou Xuanji comforted her. He had only grown to the height of little Jiang Shui's stomach, so the scene was a little comical. Yes, I believe you. Little Jiang Shui smiled sweetly and picked up the wooden sword to continue her training. Now, Zhou Xuanji had officially stepped onto the path of cultivation. He spent most of his time on cultivation and occasionally gave little Jiang Shui some pointers on her swordsmanship. Little Jiang Shui was also very hardworking and not playful. Zhou Xuanji did not want to dampen her enthusiasm, so he did not stop her. Half a month later, Zhou Xuanji reached Qi Nurturing Level 2. The Qi Nourishing stage was divided into 10 stages. It was the first stage of cultivation for humans. After that, there were still Foundation Establishment, Enlightening, Inner Pellet, Spirit Spring, Nascent Soul, Astral Projection, Spirit Refinement, and Mahayana. The Empress of the Great Zhou was an existence that far surpassed the Inner Pellet realm. To him, she had a long way to go. 1 month later, Zhou Xuanji reached Qi Nurturing Level 3. 3 months later, Zhou Xuanji reached Qi Nurturing Level 4. 5 months later, Zhou Xuanji reached Qi Nurturing Level 5. He could cultivate the second level of the Golden Body Incantation. A 3-year-old cultivator at Qi Nurturing Level 5. If word got out, he would definitely be beaten up like a monster. At the same time, his physical strength had already reached 3,000 pounds of force. It was all thanks to those pills that he could cultivate so quickly. At the same time, the Supreme Legendary Sword system was constantly nourishing his muscles and bones, or else he would not have been able to withstand the impact of spiritual qi at the age of 3. Zhou Xuanji did not cultivate the second level of the Golden Body Incantation. According to the Sword Spirit, he was still too young. It would be best for him to cultivate after he was 5 years old. That way, the effect would be greater. Zhou Xuanji did not rush for instant benefits but continued internalizing qi. The white crane sword technique, which he used with spiritual energy, was extremely destructive. He could easily cut down a tree that was 20 centimeters tall from 5 meters away. An ordinary wild boar would be killed in one hit. He was fascinated by the feeling of becoming stronger. In front of the cliff at the top of the mountain, it had become a place for 2 children to cultivate. This day, at noon. How can it be? Qi nurturing level 5. Zhou Xuanji heard a cry of surprise. He opened his eyes and saw Qiu Beili flying in the air on his sword. Qiu Beili was trembling and looking at him in disbelief. When she saw him, little Jiang Shui became anxious immediately and ran to his side. Zhou Xuanji frowned and got up slowly. Facing a cultivator at the inner pellet stage, they could not escape. Qiu Beili witnessed him killing the evil cultivator with a sneak attack last time, so he would not let his guard down. Qiu Beili looked down at Zhou Xuanji, and his heart was in turmoil. Ever since he recovered from his injuries, he had been looking for Zhou Xuanji everywhere. The heavens did not disappoint those who waited. He finally found him. But a year ago, this kid did not have any spiritual energy at all. He reached Qi nurturing level 5 in just a year? And that sword, what's with it? Chapter 9. What do you want to do? We are your saviors. Zhou Xuanji held little Jiang Shui's hand and asked loudly. The childish voice resounded through the clouds, pulling Qiu Beili's thoughts back to reality. He tried his best to squeeze out a smile and said, "Don't worry, I'm not an evil cultivator. The one from last time was a demonic cultivator. I come from a famous righteous sect, the Hidden Sword Sect. Have you heard of it?" Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui opened their eyes wide, looking lost. Qiu Beili shook his head and laughed. That's right, how could these 2 children have heard of the Hidden Sword Sect? He slowly descended and asked with a smile, "Which sect or clan do you come from? Do you need me to send you back?" He was sure that Zhou Xuanji had an extraordinary background and wanted to form a good relationship with him. Zhou Xuanji held the frost wave sword tightly and replied decisively, "No need. He doesn't have any killing intent." The sword spirit reminded him timely, which made Zhou Xuanji heave a sigh of relief. He did not think that he could win against an inner pellet realm cultivator. Qiu Beili stopped in mid-air and said helplessly, "Believe me, I really don't have any ill intentions. Do I look like a bad person to you? If I were a bad guy, I could have ambushed you just now, but I didn't." Zhou Xuanji stored his frost wave sword and said, "Okay, I believe you, but you cannot come into contact with us." Since she couldn't beat him, she might as well treat him as a good person. Qiu Beili laughed and landed on the cliff. He waved at them and said, "Come here, be careful not to fall." Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui were a golden couple. They were very lovable, and Qiu Beili had a good impression of them. However, Zhou Xuanji was very ruthless last year, which made him keep an eye on him. He did not want to die in the hands of a 3-year-old child. Zhou Xuanji pretended to be vigilant. He held little Jiang Shui's hand and walked around carefully, which made Qiu Beili burst into laughter. They only started chatting when they were halfway up the mountain. In order to lower the vigilance of the 2 children, Qiu Beili first told them about his background. So, the evil cultivator that Zhou Xuanji killed was the genius of the demonic inferno sect, Yi Fifan. Yi Fifan was ranked 92nd on the hero ranking board. The hero role was a ranking of geniuses under 100 years old. There were many cultivators in the great Zhou dynasty. To be ranked 92nd under 100 years old, one could see how powerful he was. 10 years ago, Qiu Beili became enemies with Yi Fifan. At that time, Yi Fifan was massacring a village. Xiao Bailey saw the injustice and pulled out his sword to help. This time, Xiao Bailey left the Hidden Sword sect and was preparing to go to a city under the Hidden Sword sect to recruit disciples. In the end, he encountered Xiaofan, and the two of them inevitably had a fierce battle. Xiao Bailey could not defeat Xiaofan, but he managed to injure Xiaofan, which gave Zhou Xuanji an opportunity. Of course, the main reason why Zhou Xuanji could succeed was because of his 2-year-old appearance. Who would believe that a heavenly son of the devil sect died in the hands of a 2-year-old child? Speaking up to this point, Xiao Bailey sighed and said, "The reason why I'm looking for you guys is to repay a debt of gratitude. Seeing that you guys are all alone, it's really dangerous to wander outside. Why don't I send you guys back? I don't want anything in return." He looked at Zhou Xuanji sincerely. The 3-year-old boy in front of him was too amazing. He could not treat Zhou Xuanji like a child. He even suspected that Zhou Xuanji had been possessed by an old senior and that his soul was very mature. Little did he know that he was half right. However, he had also heard of some legends. Some clans with powerful bloodlines had prodigies that were incomparable to ordinary people. Zhou Xuanji waved his hand and said, "Just send us home. Just leave behind some cultivation techniques, pills, and enchanted artifacts. It's up to you how much you want." He did not say that he and little Jiang Shui had no one to rely on, in case Xiao Bailey had evil intentions. Xiao Bailey heard him and immediately took out a storage bag from his waist. He took out 2 books, a dagger, and 3 small bottles made of white jade and placed them beside Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui. "Here are 2 energy techniques. Pick one, I can teach you. I have not fully recovered from my injuries, so I can accompany you for 2 years. After 2 years, I have to leave, and I cannot delay any longer. Don't worry, really. If I have evil intentions towards you, I have hundreds and thousands of ways to make you surrender." Xiao Bailey said solemnly again. He sighed in his heart. Why is this 3-year-old so vigilant? Lacking love since young? Little Jiang Shui sucked on her finger and asked timidly, "Old grandpa, are you really not lying to us? We are very pitiful. I lost my parents when I was young, and my grandma did not want me. Xuanji's parents were eaten by demons. Don't lie to us." Zhou Xuanji almost fainted. "You told us about our background just like that?" Fortunately, it was not his real background. Xiao Bailey heard them and showed a loving expression. He said, "How about this, you acknowledge me as your grandfather, and I will bring you back to the Hidden Sword sect. From now on, you will be my grandchildren." Putting aside his soft-heartedness, Zhou Xuanji's talent also moved him. However, such talent could also bring him trouble. Little Jiang Shui heard him and asked in surprise, "Really?" Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes at her and said, "We will not go to the Hidden Sword sect. We will stay here." If they went to the Hidden Sword sect, there would be too many people. What if they were exposed? The Hidden Sword sect was still within the Great Zhou Empire. Little Jiang Shui was very obedient to him. She nodded and said, "I will go wherever Xuanji says to go." Ever since the heavy rain, she no longer called Zhou Xuanji her little brother. Xiao Bailey shook his head and laughed. "This little brat. All right then, I will accompany you for 2 years. What energy technique do you want to cultivate?" Xiao Bailey compromised. Little Jiang Shui looked at Zhou Xuanji. After he nodded, she picked up the 2 books. It must be said that although little Jiang Shui's grandmother was not responsible, she had already taught her how to read when she was 3 years old. There were less than 5 people in the village who could read, including little Jiang Shui. If it were on Earth, a 3-year-old who could read would be considered a prodigy. Seeing little Jiang Shui's hesitation, Xiao Bailey smiled warmly and said, "You are a girl, so you should cultivate the spring snow technique. When you reach great accomplishment, you can form an inner pellet. You will not age, and your lifespan will be 500 years. Little Jiang Shui heard him and nodded immediately. She blinked and asked curiously, "What is an inner pellet?" Xiao Beili explained patiently and taught little Jiang Shui about cultivation. Zhou Xuanji did not tell her about it before because he was afraid that she would not understand. It was useless even if he told her, so she might as well focus on training her sword. After little Jiang Shui understood, Xiao Beili turned to him and asked, "You want to cultivate the other book?" Zhou Xuanji had already read the other energy technique. It was not suitable for sword cultivators, so he shook his head and said, "No need, I have an energy technique passed down in my family." Xiao Beili nodded. This kid was already at Qi nurturing level 5 after all. And so, Xiao Beili settled down. Zhou Xuanji did not allow Xiao Beili to stay in the same house as them. Xiao Beili had no choice but to build a wooden house for himself. For the next month, Zhou Xuanji was on his guard. Xiao Beili spent most of his time recuperating, but he occasionally taught little Jiang Shui how to cultivate. At first, he was interested in the white crane's sword technique that little Jiang Shui was practicing. But after studying it for a long time, he could not figure it out, because little Jiang Shui's sword technique was too lousy. Life went on as usual. 3 months later. Heavy snow fell from the sky. Zhou Xuanji broke through to Qi nurturing level 6, and little Jiang Shui officially stepped into Qi nurturing level 1. Xiao Beili sat on the peak of a mountain and looked at the horizon. Amidst the falling snow, the mountains were faintly discernible. What is that? Chapter 10. Just as Xiao Beili was looking at the horizon, little Jiang Shui's voice came from behind, "Grandpa, come here quickly. I'm in trouble with my cultivation." Xiao Beili collected his thoughts, stood up and walked over. Until today, little Jiang Shui had already treated him as her grandfather. Zhou Xuanji also acknowledged him, and their relationship was considered close. Zhou Xuanji was internalizing qi at the waist of the mountain, keeping a distance from Xiao Beili. Because Xiao Beili's cultivation level was too high, he could not compete with the heaven and earth spiritual qi. "I'm going to be 4 soon." Zhou Xuanji looked forward to it in his heart. He once took out the frost wave sword to practice his sword technique. Xiao Beili's expression changed drastically after he looked at it for a while. He pulled Zhou Xuanji and said earnestly, "Xuanji, in the future, unless you are in a life-threatening situation, don't ever take out your 2 swords, or else you will attract endless trouble." Just the bronze-ranked frost wave sword alone caused Xiao Beili's expression to change drastically. Zhou Xuanji was filled with anticipation for the gold, amethyst, and glorious gold-grade legendary swords. Time continued to fly. In the blink of an eye, another 3 months had passed. Analyze that the sword owner has reached 4 years old. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations, sword owner has obtained, silver, bloodbath sword, 8-step sword lunge, 100 level 3 spirit stones. Hearing the sword spirit's voice, Zhou Xuanji was pleasantly surprised. Another silver divine sword. With a thought, information about the bloodbath sword appeared before his eyes. Sword name, bloodbath sword, level, silver, description, bloodthirsty sword. The more blood it absorbs, the stronger its murderous aura. A blood-sucking sword? Is this a demonic sword? Zhou Xuanji was even more delighted. The different attributes of the swords meant that they would be more effective against different enemies. As for level 3 spirit stones, he naturally knew about them. Spirit stones were the common currency in the cultivation world, and they could also be used for cultivation. From low to high, they were divided into 9 grades. The difference between each grade was 10 times. A level 2 spirit stone was equivalent to 10 level 1 spirit stones, and so on. This was equivalent to obtaining 10,000 level 1 spirit stones. In addition, he still had a lot of spirit stones in the supreme storage, which came from Yi Fifan and Shenhua of the Fong family. What is the 8-step sword lunge? Sword technique or equipment? Zhou Xuanji asked curiously. Next, a wave of memories entered his mind. The 8-step sword lunge was a kind of footwork that was driven by sword qi. A single step could allow one to travel up to 100 meters, and within 8 steps, one could kill all enemies. Of course, this was just an exaggeration. Once he integrated the 8-step sword lunge's memory, he immediately started practicing. The footwork of the 8-step sword lunge was extremely strange. Just the first movement alone caused Zhou Xuanji to fall flat on his face. Xiao Beili, who was at the top of the mountain, opened his eyes and looked at Zhou Xuanji's awkward movements with curiosity. What was this little brat doing again? After half an hour, Zhou Xuanji finally finished practicing the 8-step sword lunge. He continued to practice, sometimes tripping and falling, then getting up again. By the end of the day, he had barely practiced 18 times, and he was still persistent at night. By the next morning, Zhou Xuanji had practiced 50 times. The more he practiced, the easier it was for him. After practicing 100 times, his 8-step sword lunge had only reached the initial stage. It was obviously more difficult to practice than the white crane sword technique. The next day, his enthusiasm did not diminish and he continued to practice. That day, he practiced it 500 times, and the 8-step sword lunge reached perfection. Xiao Beili was dumbfounded as he watched Zhou Xuanji maneuver continuously at the waist of the mountain, as though he was teleporting. At first, he thought that Zhou Xuanji was just blindly training, but he did not expect that he really had some skill. He quickly grabbed Zhou Xuanji and asked, "What footwork is that?" Zhou Xuanji said calmly, 8-step sword lunge. The 4-year-old pretended to be mature, which made him look comical. 8-step sword lunge, Xiao Beili mumbled to himself, as though he had fallen into a demonic trance. Zhou Xuanji shook off his hand and continued to practice the 8-step sword lunge. With his current cultivation, he could only move 10 meters with each step. After 8 steps, his spirit energy would be depleted. Without spirit energy, the 8-step sword lunge could only be an ordinary footwork, and it did not have the effect of maneuvering. Xiao Beili looked at him with a complicated expression. He could only feel pain in his liver. This brat is really devilish. Could he be the reincarnation of an immortal? With such talent, he might be able to challenge the supreme throne of the 9 great sword emperors in the future. Although Xiao Beili was curious, he was not greedy. Instead, he wanted to take Zhou Xuanji as his disciple even more. After learning the 8-step sword lunge, Zhou Xuanji's power increased by leaps and bounds. To hone his battle techniques, he began to spar with Xiao Beili. When he saw Zhou Xuanji's white crane sword will, Xiao Beili was almost petrified. It was his first time seeing Zhou Xuanji use the white crane sword will. Mastering the sword will at the age of 4. There was no such person in the history of the hidden sword sect. Even in the entire Great Zhou Empire, he had never heard of such a person. After that, Xiao Beili had even greater expectations for Zhou Xuanji. Every day, he would instill the concept of justice in Zhou Xuanji's mind, such as helping others in the face of injustice, and slaying demons and devils. Zhou Xuanji's ears almost grew calluses after listening to him. Half a year later, Zhou Xuanji broke through to the 8th level of qi nurturing. He used up all of his level 3 spirit stones to break through 2 levels consecutively. Xiao Beili was completely convinced. Little Jiang Shui reached the 3rd level of qi nurturing, all thanks to Xiao Beili's guidance. He did not share his level 3 spirit stones with little Jiang Shui, because Xiao Beili did not allow it. He claimed that little Jiang Shui's body could not handle level 3 spirit stones. On this day, Xiao Beili gathered Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui together. He sighed and said, "I have to leave for some time. I wanted to stay for another year, but my fellow disciples encountered some trouble, so I have to go and solve it. Zhou Xuanji was deep in thought. There was a night eagle that flew over last night. Could it be a message from the hidden sword sect? Little Jiang Shui nodded and said, Grandpa, remember to come back and see us. Xiao Bailey rubbed her head and smiled kindly, don't worry. When I'm done with my work, I will come back. His eyes were filled with regret and worry. He turned to look at Zhou Xuanji and continued, Xuanji, take good care of your sister. Do you understand? Both of you depend on each other, no one can abandon the other. Before Zhou Xuanji could speak, little Jiang Shui hugged his neck and giggled, Xuanji is my closest relative, he will not abandon me. She was full of confidence in Zhou Xuanji. If she had to choose between Zhou Xuanji and her grandmother, she would definitely choose Zhou Xuanji. Xiao Bailey smiled and turned to fly on his sword. He transformed into a beam of light and quickly disappeared into the horizon. For some reason, Zhou Xuanji felt that he might never return. Because his gaze was the same as Lady Zhao Xian's when she abandoned him. Zhou Xuanji did not stop him. Firstly, he did not have the ability, and secondly, he could not. He sighed and continued to cultivate with little Jiang Shui. Zhou Xuanji's target was to reach foundation building by the age of 6. The days went on, and the two of them maintained their range of activity within a radius of 5 miles. Behind the Sword Emperor slope was a forest, where they could catch wild hares, boars, and other prey. And in front of the Sword Emperor slope was a river, where they could catch fish. 2 months later. A deafening roar came from the north, which shocked Zhou Xuanji so much that he opened his eyes. Little Jiang Shui, who was cultivating beside him, stood up immediately and hid behind his back. She thought that a demon was attacking. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He sat on the top of the mountain and could see the north. The mountain range was undulating, and the roar came from the horizon, which made his heart palpitate. Could it be that a powerful demon was approaching? It was his first time hearing such a ferocious roar. It was deafening. Xuanji, should we move to another place to stay? Chapter 11. Zhou Xuanji muttered, all right. That roar was simply too frightening. For the two children, it was better not to seek death and hide as far away as possible. As for whether Xiao Bailey wouldn't be able to find them after he returned, they didn't have to worry about that at all. After all, Xiao Bailey was an inner pellet cultivator. The two of them began to pack their rations and clothes. After they were done, Zhou Xuanji stored their wooden huts into the supreme storage straightaway. Xiao Bailey's wooden hut was too simple and crude, so there was no value in bringing it along. Now that they were cultivators, their speed was naturally much faster than before. Not only that, but their physical strength was also very good. Ordinary adults could not compare to them. Along the way, after walking for 9 days straight, they didn't stop. They were afraid that the demonic beast would catch up to them, so the further they went, the better. On this day, they traversed through the forest. The surrounding trees were not very dense, but they were all very tall. There were many bushes between the trees, and the two children could walk among them and hide at any time. Whoosh! An air-piercing sound came from the sky in front of them. Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui were so frightened that they quickly squatted down and hid behind the bushes. If he encountered a cultivator in the wilderness, he would hide if he could. This was what Xiao Bailey had told them. The border of the southern Snow Empire was extremely chaotic. Even the soldiers could not intervene. 9 out of 10 people they met were not kind. Zhou Xuanji looked up secretly and saw numerous cultivators flying above the forest on their demons. Those demonic beasts had the body of a deer and the head of a lion. They had a pair of wings, and their auras were powerful, causing them to tremble in fear. Only after they left did Zhou Xuanji heave a sigh of relief. He got up and was about to leave with little Jiang Shui when he realized that little Jiang Shui had disappeared. He subconsciously turned around and saw a woman in black holding little Jiang Shui a few meters away. At the same time, she was covering little Jiang Shui's mouth with her left hand. This woman's face was cold and elegant. Her eyes were long and narrow, and her hair was tied into two buns. Her temperament was sinister, and one could tell at a glance that she was not a good woman. Just when Zhou Xuanji was about to speak, he felt a heavy blow on the back of his neck, and he immediately fainted. Hoo-hoo, a cold wind blew across Zhou Xuanji's face, and he gradually regained consciousness. He felt that he was lying on a pair of soft thighs, and a smooth hand was touching his face. This little guy is so cute. I can't even bear to eat him. A flirtatious voice rang out. Just the sound of it was enough to cause ripples in any man's heart. Wait a minute. Eat? Zhou Xuanji woke up with a start. He opened his eyes and was shocked to find that he could not move his body. There was a hand pressed against his small chest. Oh. The little guy is awake. The woman in black who caught little Jiang Shui earlier was hugging Zhou Xuanji. She lowered her head and smiled. Her smile was so cold. Zhou Xuanji looked for little Jiang Shui instinctively and found her sitting beside him with a wronged expression. They were at the top of the mountain. Under the curtain of night, the moonlight shone, and the cold wind was biting. A total of 17 cultivators were gathered around the bonfire. Behind them were their respective demonic beast mounts, all of them dozing off. Madam Knight 7, why don't you just accept him as your son? Don't eat him. A muscular man sitting opposite Zhou Xuanji said with a grin. He wore a beast skin robe and had a rough face, like a ferocious beast in human form. The other cultivators also joined in and made fun of Madam 7 Knight. Every virgin boy and girl loved by Qingyang will be boiled into soup. But this kid is really good looking. I guess he's the son of some big family. Tisk tsk, that girl is not bad too. Leave her for me to raise. When she grows up, she will be a cauldron. Get lost, you will die in a woman's belly sooner or later. Ha ha ha, we Yellow Gust 17 fiends cannot fight among ourselves. Zhou Xuanji shuddered as he listened to Madam Knight 7 bickering with the others. This woman actually likes to eat children. No matter how soft Madam Knight 7's body was, at this moment, Zhou Xuanji was terrified. He cursed in his heart, sword spirit, why didn't you warn me that there was someone behind me? If you resisted, you would have died on the spot. It was better to let you be knocked out. The sword spirit replied, his voice still emotionless. Zhou Xuanji was silent. Little Jiang Shui came over and comforted him. Xuanji, don't be afraid, your sister is here. Her eyes were red and her voice was choked with sobs. She was obviously very afraid. Madam Knight 7 heard her and laughed softly, little girl, you are really a good sister. Zhou Xuanji struggled and shouted, let me go, you are going to crush me to death. Madam Knight 7 heard him and immediately let go. Zhou Xuanji quickly got up and pulled little Jiang Shui aside. They did not run because the road was blocked, except for jumping off the cliff. Even if they did not fall to their deaths, it was impossible for them to escape. He had heard of the fiendish name of the Yellow Gust 17 fiends. In order to prevent little Jiang Shui from running around, Qiu Bailey often told her some terrifying legends to scare her. Among them was the Yellow Gust 17 fiends. They were ferocious devils at the border of the southern Snow Kingdom. They raped and pillaged, and committed all kinds of crimes. Qiu Bailey said that even he could not defeat the Yellow Gust 17 fiends. Which meant that the Yellow Gust 17 fiends were at least 17 powerful inner pellet cultivators. Madam Knight 7 looked at him with a smile and licked her lips, as though she was already fantasizing about boiling him into soup. Zhou Xuanji looked at her and got goosebumps. Right, Have you heard about the Minghun arranged by Emperor Yan of Zhou? A skinny man grinned, and the other 16 fiends turned to look at him. He cleared his throat and continued, 2 years ago, Lady Zhao Xian left the palace with the little prince. I heard that the empress sent powerful cultivators to hunt them down, and both mother and son died. Emperor Yan of Zhou just returned and heard about this. He was furious and ordered the 5-year-old Princess Ling Ling to marry the little prince when she comes of age. The little prince is dead. If this is not a Minghun, then what is it? Zhou Xuanji was stunned. He remembered Princess Ling Ling. She was a year older than him. The two of them met a few times under his mother's guidance. Every time she saw him, the girl would cry non-stop, which annoyed him. He was not moved. Instead, he was confused. Princess Ling Ling was conferred the title of princess. She was Lady Zhao Xian's good friend, Lady Chen, as her adoptive mother. She was the daughter of a general who died on the battlefield in the Great Zhou Empire. After the general's death, his residence was wiped out by a mysterious enemy, and only Princess Ling Ling was left. Consort Chen really liked Princess Ling Ling. Why did she want to marry her to Zhou Xuanji? Could it be that Emperor Yan of Zhou hated Lady Zhao Xian, so he implicated Lady Chen and her daughter? Zhou Xuanji thought of many things. He felt that the Empress was most likely behind this. Madame Knight 7 shook her head and said, Lady Zhao Xian was once favored, but it was a pity that she could not be compared to the Empress, who was Emperor Yan of Zhou's childhood sweetheart. Rumors spread throughout the Great Zhou Empire and all the kingdoms under it. Everyone knew that the death of Lady Zhao Xian and her son had something to do with the Empress. But Emperor Yan of Zhou did not blame the Empress. Chapter 12. The second Prince of Great Britain, Zhou Xianlong, had unparalleled talent. He started cultivating at the age of 6, built his foundation at the age of 9, and reached the inner pellet stage at the age of 20. He was ranked first on the Great Zhou Hero ranking board before he was even 50 years old. Later, his name disappeared from the Great Zhou Hero ranking board due to his age exceeding the limit. Zhou Xuanji snorted coldly. One day, he would surpass Zhou Xianlong. He had never seen his elder brother before, but the Empress was so arrogant because of Zhou Xianlong. In his memory, the Empress would mention Zhou Xianlong every 10 sentences, as if she was afraid that others did not know that she had such a talented son. Yo, that little brat is listening very seriously. Do you know what we are talking about? Do you want some milk? A half-naked fat man pointed at Zhou Xuanji and said with a smile. His face was oily and looked like a mountain of meat. As he spoke, he even jiggled the flesh on his chest. Zhou Xuanji's mouth twitched. He suddenly wanted to kill someone. This fat pig was asking for a beating. Little Jiang Shui stood in front of Zhou Xuanji like a mother hen protecting her chicks. Madame Knight 7 coldly snorted and said, Fierce tiger, he is mine. Don't have any ideas about him. Tiger? This is obviously Pigsy, alright? Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes and began to think about how to escape from the Yellow Gust 17 murderers. First, he had to lower the Yellow Gust 17 fiends' guard against him. 4-year-old faces are the most deceiving. He had yet to display his prowess. Based on his understanding of Little Jiang Shui definitely did not reveal his strength. Otherwise, how could they not be tied up? The Yellow Gust 17 fiends continued chatting idly. Zhou Xuanji pulled Little Jiang Shui to sit down in front of a large rock. Little Jiang Shui looked at Zhou Xuanji and stared at him, asking him with her eyes what to do. Zhou Xuanji was someone who could sense danger. After all, he had already died once. For the past 2 years, every night, he and Little Jiang Shui would simulate a dangerous situation. The two little kids had developed a deep understanding of each other, and they even had countless secret signals. Zhou Xuanji's eyeballs leaned inward, making a cross-eyed expression. Yes, also known as cross-eyed. What he meant was to observe the situation and wait for the right opportunity. Little Jiang Shui blinked her eyes, meaning that she agreed. Madam Knight 7 saw their little movements. Although she did not turn her head, she seemed to be deep in thought. These two children both have spiritual energy in their bodies, and they are not accompanied by adults. I'm afraid their origins are not simple. Matriarch Knight 7 thought to herself that the older, the wiser. Although Zhou Xuanji had lived 2 lives, he was still younger than Madam Knight 7. Naturally, he could not divine Madam Knight 7's thoughts. Not only Madam Knight 7, but the other 16 fiends were also curious about the origins of Zhou Xuanji and Yi Shiwen. This was also the reason why Zhou Xuanji and Yi Shiwen were still alive. The absolute difference in power made it so that they did not pay special attention to Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui. As they chatted, Zhou Xuanji finally found out their goal. Dragon Eagle. It was a kind of demon eagle that contained the bloodline of the real dragon. It was very powerful and had already refined the demon elixir, which was equivalent to the inner elixir in the human cultivation realm. However, among the same realm, the strength of the demon beasts was usually stronger, not to mention the dragon eagle that contained the bloodline of the real dragon. The whereabouts of the dragon eagles were secretive and they were rare. Every part of their body was a priceless treasure. Recently, the appearance of the dragon eagles at the border of the southern Snow Kingdom had caused quite a commotion. Many people wanted to get their hands on the dragon eagles, including the Yellow Gust 17 fiends. Zhou Xuanji thought to himself, it seems that if I want to escape, I have to wait until they surround the dragon eagles. But he was also worried. What if he was turned into soup before then? He shuddered at the thought of it. After chatting for 2 hours, the Yellow Gust 17 fiends finally stopped. Some began to sleep, while others began to cultivate. The cliff fell into silence. Zhou Xuanji lay in little Jiang Shui's arms and pretended to sleep. He could feel that little Jiang Shui was very nervous. Her body was stiff, and she was trembling slightly. In her eyes, the Yellow Gust 17 fiends were more horrifying than demons. Previously, the Yellow Gust 17 fiends had told her about their methods of torturing people, which scared her so much that her face turned pale. Zhou Xuanji did not comfort her. At this moment, he could not appear too mature. The night passed uneventfully. The next morning, when the first ray of sunlight streaked across the horizon, the Yellow Gust 17 fiends set off. Madam Knight 7 lifted Zhou Xuanji up like a little chick and threw him onto the demon mount, followed by little Jiang Shui. The Yellow Gust 17 fiends did not seem to be harmonious. Madam Knight 7 was afraid that her companions would snatch Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui away. She sat behind little Jiang Shui, while Zhou Xuanji sat in front of her. Little Jiang Shui hugged his waist with one hand and grabbed Madam Knight 7's thigh with the other. She was afraid that Zhou Xuanji would fall. Zhou Xuanji noticed that the Yellow Gust 17 fiends were heading toward the Sword Emperor slope, where they stayed previously. Could it be that the roar that scared them away came from the dragon eagles? Zhou Xuanji felt complicated. After so many twists and turns, he had to return to the same place again. It was close to noon, and they finally arrived at the dragon eagle's territory. In front of them was a mountain that reached into the clouds. At the foot of the mountain was a forest that stretched as far as the eye could see. Many cultivators were scattered in the forest. Some were cultivating under the trees, while others were looking at the peak from the branches. Zhou Xuanji alone saw more than 10 people. All of them were attracted by the dragon eagles. The Yellow Gust 17 fiends landed in the forest. Madam Knight 7 carried Zhou Xuanji with her left hand and little Jiang Shui with her right. She brought them to a large tree. She took out a red rope that was as thick as a baby's arm and tied Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui to the tree trunk. Being tied up by the red rope, Zhou Xuanji felt that the spirit energy in his body was not listening to him. An enchanted artifact. Zhou Xuanji opened his watery eyes and looked at Madame Knight 7 pitifully, hoping that she would soften her heart. "Sister, it hurts. Can you loosen it a little?" he asked with a sobbing tone. Little Jiang Shui heard him and looked like she was about to cry. Madame Knight 7 pinched Zhou Xuanji's little face and smiled charmingly. "Little brother, don't cry. It will hurt even more later." The red rope suddenly shrunk and tightened even more than before. "Zhou Xuanji." Madame Knight 7 checked for a while, then turned around and returned to the group of Yellow Gust 17 fiends. They leaped up and came to the top of the forest, looking toward the peak. Roar! The dragon eagle's roar came from above the clouds. It was deafening, like a dragon's roar. Zhou Xuanji was already sure that the roar that scared him away was from the dragon eagle. Little Jiang Shui hooked his palm with her pinky finger and asked with her eyes, "What should we do next?" Although she was afraid, she kept her composure and did not give him any more trouble. Zhou Xuanji gave her the cross-eye signal again. "Wait and see." With the sharpness of the crimson dragon sword, it would not be difficult to cut the red rope. Now, they had to wait for the Yellow Gust 17 fiends to fight with the dragon eagle, or else they would not be able to escape. Time ticked by. The dragon eagle's roar became more frequent. More than 30 cultivators appeared above the forest. The cultivators were chatting in groups of 2s and 3s. "It's laying eggs? Such a powerful dragon's might. Its muscles must be very nourishing. Be careful, the Yellow Gust 17 fiends are over there." The Yellow Gust 17 fiends are nothing. The most threatening person is him, Zhang Tianjian. Chapter 13. Zhang Tianjian was a general of the Southern Snow Kingdom. His cultivation had reached inner pellet stage level 5. He had high attainments in the sword Dao and was in command of 300,000 cavalry. He was dressed in a blue brocade robe, with a white cloth made of silk tied around his forehead. His black hair was loose, and his posture was tall and straight. His expression was cold and arrogant. His arms were crossed in front of his chest, and his left hand was still holding onto the scabbard. He glanced at the Yellow Gust 17 fiends and snorted coldly. The Yellow Gust 17 fiends were demons that were being hunted down by various dynasties. If it wasn't for the sake of snatching the dragon eagle, he would have made his move long ago. At the thought of the dragon eagle, his heart was burning with passion. If they could tame the dragon eagles, the Southern Snow Kingdom's combat power would definitely be stronger. If this kind of demonic beast was thrown into the battlefield, it would definitely be a weapon of war. The Yellow Gust 17 fiends also noticed Zhang Tianjian. They sneered and deliberately spoke loudly to mock Zhang Tianjian. "Who would have thought that a great general of the dynasty would fight with us over these things? Shu, lower your voice. He is Zhang Tianjian, an expert in the way of the sword. Although he was rejected by the Sword Emperor, he is still very powerful." Ha ha ha, he thought that he had great talent in the way of the sword, but he was looked down upon by the Sword Monarch, saying that he had no talent in the way of the sword. "Do you want to die? Don't hit my face. I wonder if the meat of a sword cultivator tastes good." Zhang Tianjian's expression became more and more unsightly as he listened, and he seemed to be on the verge of drawing his sword. Being refused by the Sword Emperor was the most humiliating thing in his life. 15 years ago, he comprehended the will of the sword and defeated the enemy states. His fame spread far and wide, which boosted his confidence. Therefore, he went to learn from the Sword Monarch of Great Zhou. However, the Sword Monarch rejected him in front of everyone. He even said that his talent in the way of the sword was not enough, and that it would be difficult for him to become someone great. After that, he returned to the Southern Snow Kingdom dejectedly and became a general. However, this matter had become his laughingstock. Even after 15 years had passed, people would still mention it from time to time. He did not dare to hate the Sword Monarch of Great Zhou. After all, the Sword Monarch was an existence that was above a dynasty. However, he was not afraid of the Yellow Gust 17 fiends. In his eyes, the Yellow Gust 17 fiends were already dead. Seeing that Zhang Tianjian was about to explode, the Yellow Gust 17 fiends began to change the topic. They were still very afraid of Zhang Tianjian and did not want others to reap the benefits. Time continued to pass. The Dragon Eagle's roar began to weaken. Even the demonic aura that enveloped the forest was weakening. Finally, someone couldn't take it anymore. Like a swallow, the man leaped up from the forest, stepped on the mountain wall as if it was flat ground, and rushed to the top of the mountain. The others moved out as well when they saw this, and this included Zhang Tianjian and the Yellow Gust 17 fiends. All of them charged up the mountain. In order to fight for the Dragon Eagle, all of the Yellow Gust 17 fiends were mobilized. None of them were left behind to guard Zhou Xuanji and Jiang Shaotian. In the forest, Zhou Xuanji looked up, and through the gaps between the leaves, he saw cultivators charging toward the peak one after another. Some flew on their swords, while others sprinted along the mountain walls. They were all displaying their divine abilities, and it was a grand sight. The Yellow Gust 17 fiends have all gone up? Zhou Xuanji asked in his heart. The Sword Spirit's ability was not only to help him explain how to use the Supreme Legendary Sword system, but it could also help him keep an eye on his surroundings and even predict the other party's emotional fluctuations. There is no trace of them within a radius of 500 meters. Zhou Xuanji immediately took out the Crimson Dragon Sword. The legendary swords in the Supreme Legendary Sword system could be controlled by spiritual energy. It was perfect. With a thought, the Crimson Dragon Sword easily cut through the red rope on his body. Little Jiang Shui heaved a sigh of relief and patted her chest. She tried her best to remain calm and said softly, "Let's run." Zhou Xuanji nodded and leaped onto the Crimson Dragon Sword. He stretched out his hand and pulled little Jiang Shui up. Sword flight. Zhou Xuanji did not know the sword flight technique, but he could easily control the legendary sword with his mind. For the past 2 years, he did not only internalize qi. He channeled his spirit energy to the bottom of his shoes and connected himself tightly with the Crimson Dragon Sword. At the same time, he carried little Jiang Shui and began to travel through the forest. The Crimson Dragon Sword did not fly very fast. Even an ordinary foundation-building cultivator could catch up with it easily, let alone a powerful inner pellet cultivator. Before the two of them could fly out of the forest, a miserable cry came from the sky above the forest. A violent gale blew, and the forest swayed. Dust flew in all directions. Zhou Xuanji quickly controlled the Crimson Dragon Sword to fly upward. He did not want to be crushed to death by the trees. The leaves turned into blades and slashed at Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui. Zhou Xuanji was fine. He had cultivated the Golden Body incantation, and his body was tougher than ordinary people. But little Jiang Shui was not. When they flew out of the forest, little Jiang Shui was already covered in wounds. Her face was even cut open, and her face was almost disfigured. Zhou Xuanji did not have time to comfort her. He flew away on his sword. He turned his head and saw a giant eagle soaring beneath the clouds. Dragon Eagle. Its feathers were brown in color, and it had a wingspan of 30 meters. It had a pair of dragon horns on its head and a dragon tail. Its black dragon scales shone coldly in the air. The Yellow Gust 17 fiends sat on their mounts and cast spells to attack the Dragon Eagle. Zhang Tianjian and the other cultivators were also flying in the air and attacking the Dragon Eagle. Facing their attacks, the Dragon Eagle was quickly injured. Blood splattered from the sky. Zhou Xuanji did not know what happened next. He was trying his best to fly away from this place. The cold wind was bone-chilling. Little Jiang Shui hugged Zhou Xuanji tightly. Even though her entire body was in pain, she did not make a sound. Zhou Xuanji only slowed down after he passed the mountain and was far away from the dragon eagle. He looked back at little Jiang Shui and said guiltily, "Wait a little longer. When we reach a safe place, I will treat your wounds." Little Jiang Shui nodded and smiled, "I'm fine." Zhou Xuanji sighed. He did not say much and continued to fly on his sword. They flew for about 4 hours. The crimson dragon sword landed in a valley surrounded by mountains. There were many flowers and trees at the bottom of the valley, which made it easy for them to hide. After he landed, he stored the crimson dragon sword into the supreme storage. He then took out some spiritual medicine and applied it on little Jiang Shui's wounds. These spiritual medicines came from Yi Fifan from the demonic Inferno sect. He asked Qiu Bailey about the names and effects of these bottles. He did not want to take them as poison. During the process of applying the medicine, little Jiang Shui's face twitched continuously. She gasped occasionally, which made Zhou Xuanji fearful. He was even more nervous than when he was applying medicine on himself. After half an hour, little Jiang Shui's wounds were all healed. The scabs were removed, and her tender skin was revealed again. All that was left were tiny red marks. Good medicine. Zhou Xuanji sighed in amazement. It's indeed good medicine. It's mine now. Madame Knight Seven's voice came from above, which scared Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui so much that they jumped up. They looked up and saw Madame Knight Seven, with torn clothes and covered in blood, standing on the mountain wall. She was about 30 meters above the valley floor. Zhou Xuanji's face darkened. He had underestimated the flying speed of an inner pellet cultivator. But where was Madame Knight Seven's mount? Why were the other 16 fiends not here? Were they all dead? Madame Knight Seven slid down the mountain wall slowly. Her breathing was unstable, and she did not even fly. This made Zhou Xuanji's eyes brighten up. Was this evil woman seriously injured? The heavenly law reincarnates. Who would the heavens spare? It's my turn to kill. Chapter 14. Zhou Xuanji pulled little Jiang Shui to a corner of the valley. Little Jiang Shui was very afraid and held his hand tightly. At this moment, Madame Knight Seven landed on the ground. She let out a long sigh and clutched her abdomen with her right hand. Blood flowed continuously through the gaps between her fingers, causing a pained expression to appear on her face. Zhou Xuanji turned to look at little Jiang Shui. His eyes turned left, then right. What it meant was, "I'm going to fight, and you hide." Little Jiang Shui frowned and pouted. "Are you confident?" Zhou Xuanji nodded, then turned around and walked toward Madame Knight Seven. Madame Knight Seven wanted to heal her injuries first before capturing Zhou Xuanji and Zhou Xuanji. But when she saw Zhou Xuanji's posture, she laughed. His laughter was filled with killing intent and mockery. "Brat, do you think you can deal with me just because I'm injured?" Madame Knight Seven laughed coldly. She had never seen Zhou Xuanji as an ordinary child. Which ordinary child could reach the 8th level of the qi-nourishing stage at the age of 4? However, no matter how bizarre his background was, he had to die here today. She flipped her hand and took out a long black whip. There were countless spikes attached to the whip, like the stinger of a scorpion's tail. Zhou Xuanji was expressionless, but he felt uneasy in his heart. Apart from those low-level demonic beasts and ferocious beasts, this was his first time fighting them head-on. The frost wave sword appeared in his right hand. Cold air flowed along the blade, causing Madame Knight Seven's eyes to brighten. "Good sword. Kid, I didn't expect you to have a spatial artifact and a treasured sword like this. However, they're all mine now." Madame Knight 7 laughed viciously. In her heart, Zhou Xuanji was definitely a descendant of a great clan. Otherwise, he would not have such great talent and a treasured sword. Killing and robbing. This was something that the Yellow Gust 17 fiends often did. Zhou Xuanji walked toward her as he asked, "Where are your companions?" Matriarch Knight 7 smiled and replied, "They will catch up very soon." Her smile was thought-provoking. Was this brat trying to get information out of her? Just when she finished speaking, Zhou Xuanji moved. 8-step sword lunge. His figure swayed as if he was teleporting. Every time he moved, he would move 10 meters. In less than 3 steps, he was already in front of Madame Knight 7. Holding the sword in his right hand, he kicked off with his left foot, like a white crane catching fish, stabbing towards Madame Knight 7. Madame Knight 7's expression changed drastically, and she immediately lashed out with her whip. Zhou Xuanji used the 8-step sword lunge. His body was small, so he dodged the attack nimbly. He came to Madame Knight 7's back and thrust his sword forward. Even though Madame Knight 7 was severely injured, she still had the cultivation of inner pellet. Although she was shocked by Zhou Xuanji's prowess, she did not panic. She leaped up and easily dodged the sword. Then, she lashed out with her whip, which contained the sound of wind and thunder. Zhou Xuanji's reaction speed was not as fast as hers, and his right arm was numb from the whip. The poisonous spike on the whip tore his shirt and even ripped out a piece of flesh. The excruciating pain almost made him faint. The frost wave sword flew out of his hand and fell to the ground with a clang. Zhou Xuanji rolled away from Madame Knight 7. Matriarch Knight 7 teased, "Little fellow, a swordsman's sword cannot be let go." This time, Zhou Xuanji raised his left hand, and the Crimson Dragon sword appeared. Matriarch Knight 7's smile froze. Little Jiang Shui, who was far away, saw that Zhou Xuanji was injured and was extremely anxious. She felt guilty in her heart. If she was powerful enough, she could have helped Zhou Xuanji. With the Crimson Dragon sword in hand, Zhou Xuanji charged up again. This sword is of a higher grade than the previous one. Matriarch Knight 7's eyes were fixed on the Crimson Dragon sword. Her eyes were filled with possessiveness. Zhou Xuanji activated the White Crane sword will and transformed into a white crane. He began to move around and attack with the 8-step sword lunge. His body moved continuously around Matriarch Knight 7. Matriarch Knight 7 was shocked in her heart, such an amazing movement technique. If only I could have it. Her heart was burning with passion. She suddenly felt that this little brat was a treasure. I'm going to earn big this time. She dodged another sword and lashed out with her whip, hitting Zhou Xuanji's left arm. Zhou Xuanji cried out in pain, and the Crimson Dragon sword fell to the ground. He quickly stepped back. His arms were limp and dripping with blood. He looked very pitiful. "Little fellow, you dropped your sword again." Matriarch Knight 7 twisted her waist and walked toward Zhou Xuanji slowly. She had a playful smile on her face. "You can still wield a sword when both your hands are crippled? 2 swords are enough. Don't tell me you have a third one." At this moment, the bloodbath sword appeared out of thin air in front of Zhou Xuanji, its blade pointed straight at Matriarch Knight 7. Matriarch Knight 7 stopped in her tracks. Her pupils contracted as she was locked on by the bloodbath sword. A chill ran down her spine. What sword is this? Matriarch Knight 7 could not help but cry out. How many swords does this brat have? Swoosh! The bloodbath sword pierced toward Matriarch Knight 7 suddenly. It tore through the air and appeared in front of her in an instant. She tilted her head instinctively, but her cheek was still cut by the blade. Blood splattered. She was shocked in her heart. Such a fast sword. I can't delay any longer. Her murderous intent was ignited in an instant. She grasped the black whip in her hand tightly and did not want to play with Zhou Xuanji anymore. Swoosh! Swoosh! 2 consecutive air-piercing sounds came. Puff! Her throat and chest were pierced. Her life was cut off immediately. Before she died, she still maintained her ferocious face. The Crimson Dragon Sword and the Frost Wave Sword hovered above Zhou Xuanji's head. Zhou Xuanji was panting. He dropped his swords on purpose just now, so that he could deal a fatal blow. The Bloodbath Sword shocked Madam Knight 7. The Crimson Dragon Sword and the Frost Wave Sword took advantage of the opportunity to kill. His counterattack was a success. Fortunately, Madam Knight 7 was seriously injured. Otherwise, all of this would have been in vain. Just in case Madam Knight 7 was not completely dead, Zhou Xuanji controlled the Bloodbath Sword to stab Madam Knight 7 a few more times. He only walked over after he was sure that Madam Knight 7 was dead. He did not know why, but after the Bloodbath Sword absorbed Madam Knight 7's blood, his injuries recovered a little. Miraculous! He quickly took Madam Knight 7's storage ring and storage pouch, then kept the 3 divine swords and walked towards little Jiang Shui. Little Jiang Shui quickly ran to his side and supported him. Let's heal first. Don't move around. Little Jiang Shui was so anxious that she was about to cry. Looking at Zhou Xuanji's pitiful state, she blamed herself. If not for her grandmother's debt, Zhou Xuanji would not have to wander around with her. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, "Let's leave this place first in case her companions come after us." Little Jiang Shui could not dissuade him, so she naturally agreed. An hour later, a silhouette flew into the valley on a sword. It was the general of the southern Snow Kingdom, Zhang Tianjian. Zhang Tianjian's body was also stained with blood. It was obvious that he had just gone through a fierce battle. When he saw Madam Knight 7's corpse, he could not help but frown. He landed beside Madam Knight 7. When he saw that Madam Knight 7's storage pouch was missing, his face immediately turned gloomy. 2 dragon eagle eggs are missing, the yellow gust 17 fiends were all dead. 10 of them were killed by him. Madam Knight 7 was able to obtain the dragon eagle eggs from her companions. He did not expect that she would be killed right after she escaped. He began to examine Madam Knight 7's wounds, and his expression changed again. The wounds on her throat and chest are neat, and there are several sword wounds on her body. The opponent is an expert in the way of the sword. There are no remnants of sword chi. Could he have used sword will? He did not rely on sword chi to kill an inner pellet cultivator. Even if it was a heavily injured inner pellet cultivator. His mastery in the way of the sword is probably above mine, Zhang Tianjian mumbled to himself with an ugly expression. Such an expert had stolen the dragon eagle eggs, and he dared to snatch them? Chapter 15. Zhang Tianjian's fear helped Zhou Xuanji. Along the way, no one chased after him and little Jiang Shui. At night, they hid in a cave. The space inside was not big, and the light from the fire could illuminate the entire cave. Zhou Xuanji sat on the ground, and little Jiang Shui helped him apply medicine. There was also a bear corpse lying next to it. Naturally, it was the owner of the cave. Zhou Xuanji grimaced in pain as the powder sprinkled on his arms. He suddenly admired little Jiang Shui. When he applied the medicine on her earlier, she did not even make a sound. "Xuanji, why don't we find a village to stay in? It's too dangerous in the wilderness," little Jiang Shui said with reddened eyes. The yellow gust 17 fiends this time had traumatized her. This was the first time she felt that humans were scarier than demonic beasts. Zhou Xuanji thought about it and said, "Let's wait for another 2 years. If we don't have the power to protect ourselves, we will be bullied even if we go to the village. Children like us who have no parents will not end up well." The northern wilderness region was not Earth. There were no orphanages here. Little Jiang Shui nodded and bandaged his wound with a piece of cloth. Looking at her pitiful look, Zhou Xuanji sighed in his heart. Although he had saved little Jiang Shui, he had also sent her into a more dangerous situation. He had already treated little Jiang Shui as his family, so naturally, he could not abandon her. It must be said that without little Jiang Shui, Zhou Xuanji might really become a savage. This girl was so young, but her ability to survive was very strong. It didn't take long before the medicine took effect. Zhou Xuanji felt that his arms were cool and comfortable. He immediately took out Madame Knight 7's storage bag and storage ring. Since the owner was dead, the two storage artifacts became ownerless. Zhou Xuanji could use his mental energy to look inside. He almost drooled. So many pills, spirit stones, Dharma artifacts. Sure enough, bandits were the richest. Wait a minute. What is this? With a thought, 2 white eggs, which were as big as his head, appeared in Zhou Xuanji's bosom. Little Jiang Shui's eyes lit up. She moved her face closer and said, "What a big egg. It will definitely taste good if you roast it." Zhou Xuanji was speechless and said unpleasantly, "These 2 eggs must not be simple. How can you roast them directly?" He suddenly thought of a possibility, and his heart began to beat faster. He remembered that the Yellow Gust 17 fiends once said that the dragon eagle was at its weakest when it was laying eggs. Could it be? He quickly picked up a white egg and observed it carefully. Little Jiang Shui sucked on her finger and said, "Why don't we roast one and keep the other?" Zhou Xuanji tapped her forehead with his finger and said helplessly, "Do you want to eat so much?" As though it knew that it did not have long to live, the dragon eagle egg in Zhou Xuanji's bosom began to shake. It moved. Little Jiang Shui cried out and quickly pulled Zhou Xuanji away from the dragon eagle egg. The terror of the dragon eagles was still fresh in her memory. Even though it was a newborn dragon eagle, she was still a little afraid of it. Ka! The egg cracked open, and a sparkling and translucent pink dragon horn popped out. The dragon's horn continued to move, causing more and more cracks to appear on the eggshell. With a grunt, the egg rolled on the ground, and soon, a featherless eagle came out. The body of an eagle, the horns of a dragon, and the tail of a dragon. Zhou Xuanji stared at it and asked, "Do you still want to roast it?" Little Jiang Shui nodded, then shook her head and said, "It looks so cute. Let's not eat it." After that, she walked toward the dragon eagle. The newborn dragon eagle looked harmless, which made her forget her fear in an instant. Zhou Xuanji, on the other hand, set his sights on the other dragon eagle egg. As expected, the other dragon eagle egg began to shake slightly. Apparently, another dragon eagle was about to be born. Zhou Xuanji had already thought of the majestic posture of standing on the back of a dragon eagle. But how could Madame Knight 7 obtain 2 dragon eagle eggs? Zhou Xuanji felt inexplicably uneasy. He felt that there would be endless troubles ahead. After that, the 2 of them circled around the 2 dragon eagle hatchlings. The dragon eagles were extremely magical. They knew how to eat meat the moment they were born. They did not need Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui to teach them. They began to chew on the bare carcasses immediately, which disgusted them. After the 2 hatchlings were full, their beaks were already dyed red, and their bodies were also covered in blood. They even wanted to burrow into Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui's bodies, which frightened them so much that they hid in the cave. Now, Zhou Xuanji had 2 more little companions. The next day, at the first glimmer of dawn, they left. To prevent the dragon eagles from being exposed, Zhou Xuanji took 2 pieces of coarse cloth and wrapped them up. After a night, Zhou Xuanji's injuries were mostly healed, but his arms still hurt. He estimated that he would need a few more days to fully recover. This was not only the effect of the medicine, but also the help of the supreme legendary sword system. Otherwise, with his injuries, he would need at least a month to be able to move his arms. For the next 8 days, they were not pursued by the yellow gust 17 fiends or other cultivators. Finally, they came to a flatland. The grass on the flatland was short and boundless. A large river ran through the entire flatland. They decided to stay by the river. The 2 dragon eagle hatchlings had already begun to grow fur. They treated Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui as their parents. They surrounded them all day, chirping non-stop. Zhou Xuanji sat by the river and began to cultivate. The battle with Madame Knight 7 was extremely dangerous, which made him realize that he was too weak. Not only his cultivation, but his battle experience was also insufficient. Once he broke through to the Foundation Establishment realm, he would go deep into the mountains to look for demonic beasts to accumulate combat experience. Since the Yellow Gust 17 fiends were dead and Zhang Tianjian had returned to the southern Snow Kingdom, there was naturally no one to disturb them. In the blink of an eye, 100 days had passed. Zhou Xuanji broke through to Qi Nurturing level 9 and celebrated his 5th birthday at the same time. Analyze that the sword owner has reached 5 years old. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations, the sword owner has obtained Bronze, Tiger Roar Sword, Green Colt Cloud Riding Boots. Zhou Xuanji sighed in amazement. Unknowingly, 3 years had passed. He immediately checked the Tiger Roar Sword's information. Sword name, Tiger Roar Sword level, Bronze, description, Tiger Soul Treasured Sword. When the blade is swung, the sound of a tiger's roar will shock the enemy. It was a pity that it was not a silver-level godly sword. However, the bronze-ranked Frost Wave sword was enough to make Madame Knight 7 reveal a look of greed. It was evident that the bronze-ranked divine sword was not bad either. He immediately took out the Tiger Roar sword and prepared to practice. There was a tiger pattern in the center of the Tiger Roar sword's blade. The connection between the hilt and the blade was like a tiger's mouth. It was awe-inspiring. Holding the Tiger Roar sword in his hand, he started to execute the white crane sword technique by the river. Xiao! Xiao! Swoosh! Roar! His body moved gracefully, and the speed at which he swung his sword was much faster than before. The sound of the blade slicing through the air intertwined with the whistling sound. Together with the magnificent scenery of the sky and the earth, the scene was as beautiful as a painting. Not far away, little Jiang Shui, who was meditating in front of the wooden hut, opened her eyes. Another new sword? It looks so powerful, little Jiang Shui mumbled to herself. Little Jiang Shui mumbled to herself. Beside her were 2 dragon eagles that were as big as domestic dogs. Chapter 16. After practicing the white crane sword technique 10 times, Zhou Xuanji sheathed his sword in satisfaction. The Tiger Roar sword was not bad, mainly because the roar of the tiger was great, which boosted his aura. Shortly after, he took out the Cloud Striding boots. The boots were green in color, and there were many tiny patterns on the surface, as though clouds were attached to the surface. It was unique and beautiful. But, the boots were too big. How many years would he have to wait before he could wear them? You can try, sword owner. The sword spirit reminded him timely. Having heard it, Zhou Xuanji put his little foot in. When his foot was completely in, the Cloud Striding boots suddenly shrunk to a size suitable for him. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes wide. Awesome! He quickly put his other foot in, and the Cloud Striding boots shrunk. He felt that it was very novel. He bounced on the ground and did not feel that the boots would fly away. After putting on the Cloud Striding boots, he felt that his body became much lighter. He began running along the river and realized that his speed was increased. His strides became faster and faster. Without using spirit energy, he could run faster than an adult man. He was only 5 years old. Little Jiang Shui rubbed her eyes to make sure that she did not see wrongly. Although she noticed Zhou Xuanji's cloud riding boots, she did not associate Zhou Xuanji's speed with the boots. Xuanji had a breakthrough again. No, I cannot fall behind too much. Little Jiang Shui clenched her fist, then closed her eyes and focused on cultivating the spring snow technique. This grassy plain was uninhabited. Occasionally, there would be wolves and hunting dogs passing by, but they were no match for him. Instead, they became their food. Next, Zhou Xuanji did not only internalize qi for cultivation. He began to use the 4 legendary swords to unleash their full potential. Besides, he wanted to use all 4 swords at the same time. He held one sword in each hand and used his mind to control the other 2 swords. It sounded difficult, but he felt that it was achievable. He practiced his swords in the day and internalized qi at night. Time passed quickly. A year passed quickly. Zhou Xuanji broke through to qi nurturing level 10, and little Jiang Shui reached qi nurturing level 4. After a year of accumulation, Zhou Xuanji's mental energy had grown by leaps and bounds. He could already control 4 legendary swords at the same time, but he could only maintain it for 10 breaths of time. After 10 breaths of time, he would faint. The 2 dragon eagle hatchlings were already as big as water buffaloes and could fly half a year ago. Little Jiang Shui wanted to ride them, but Zhou Xuanji stopped her. What if she fell to her death? Little Jiang Shui was his cook, he could not do without her. Zhou Xuanji's golden body incantation 2nd level, iron bar, was still not completed, but his physical strength had already surpassed the force of 10,000 kilograms. He was likely Yuan Ba from China's unofficial history. Analyze that the sword owner has reached 6 years old. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations, the sword owner has obtained bronze, wind cutter sword, jade phoenix evil destroyer hairpin, fiery sword technique. The 6-year-old's lucky draw was not bad. Other than the godly sword, there was also an artifact and a sword technique manual. Zhou Xuanji had been looking forward to sword techniques for a long time. The white crane sword technique could not satisfy him at all. Very quickly, Windcutter's information appeared before his eyes. Sword name, Windbreaker sword level, bronze, description, the blade of the sword can cut through the wind. When using this sword, you will not feel any wind resistance. No wind resistance? Not bad. Zhou Xuanji took out the Windcutter sword. It was a thin sword with a narrow and thin blade. It was extremely soft and could be used as a belt. A belt. Zhou Xuanji immediately wrapped the Windcutter sword around his waist. It was not bad, so he pulled it out. Pfft, blood spurted from his waist, and his face twisted in pain. Damn! This sword is too sharp. The blade only touched his clothes lightly, so painful. Zhou Xuanji stored the Windcutter sword into the supreme storage, then walked toward the wooden hut while holding his bleeding waist. This position must not be injured. Sister! I'm bleeding! Zhou Xuanji shouted at the top of his lungs. Little Jiang Shui, who was playing with the dragon eagles, heard him and immediately ran over. The 10-year-old little Jiang Shui was still a head taller than Zhou Xuanji. Her long, black hair was tied behind her head with a thin string, revealing her smooth face. The hair in front of her forehead danced in the wind, making her look youthful and lively. Just based on her face alone, this girl would definitely have the potential to bring disaster to a country when she grew up. She ran to him and asked anxiously, "Where am I bleeding? My waist?" Zhou Xuanji gritted his teeth and pulled up his clothes. His waist was bleeding profusely. Little Jiang Shui quickly went to the wooden hut and took out a few pieces of white cloth and some medicine to stop the bleeding. As she applied the medicine for him, she complained, "Can you be more careful? If you meet an enemy in the future, you might die by your own sword." Zhou Xuanji stared at her and said, "How can it be? This was just an accident." Tsk, little Jiang Shui curled her lip. Although she was lecturing him verbally, she was very careful with her hands. She was afraid that he would feel pain. After she bandaged his wound, Zhou Xuanji took out the Jade Phoenix Evil Destroyer hairpin. How could a man like him use a hairpin? So he wanted to give it to little Jiang Shui. The Jade Phoenix Evil Destroyer hairpin was white jade in color and shaped like a phoenix. He could not feel its weight when he held it. "This is for you. This is my family's keepsake. It can exorcise evil spirits and suppress ghosts. Don't lose it." Zhou Xuanji passed the Jade Phoenix Evil Destroyer hairpin to little Jiang Shui and said casually. A long time ago, Zhou Xuanji told little Jiang Shui that his parents left him a spatial artifact that was stored in his mind. Only when his cultivation grew stronger could he obtain the treasure in the spatial artifact. When little Jiang Shui heard that it was her family's keepsake, she opened her eyes wide and blushed. She quickly rejected, "You can use it to find your family in the future. It's not good to give it to me. It's okay. You are my family too. Even if I find my family in the future, I will bring you along." Zhou Xuanji waved his hand and said. After that, he turned around and walked toward the river. Little Jiang Shui was a little stunned. She smiled sweetly and stuck the Jade Phoenix Evil Destroyer hairpin into her hair. She touched it, and the smile on her face could not be wiped away. After resting for 2 days and waiting for the wound on his waist to completely heal, Zhou Xuanji began to practice the fiery sword technique. When the fiery sword technique reached great accomplishment, the sword qi would be surrounded by flames. It was extremely destructive, even more powerful than the white crane sword technique. Just when he finished one round, an ear-piercing sound came from the horizon. Enemy attack? Zhou Xuanji's body trembled and became nervous. "Ha ha ha. I've finally found you." Qiu Beilei's laughter resounded across the horizon. Zhou Xuanji heaved a sigh of relief when he heard his voice. So it was this old man. From what he said, it seemed like he spent a lot of time looking for Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui. Soon, Qiu Beilei flew to Zhou Xuanji's side on his sword. He laughed, "Kid, you have grown a lot taller. Your cultivation is not bad either. You have reached Qi Nurturing level 10. Hiss, when he reached the latter half of his sentence, his expression turned into one of shock. A 6-year-old child at Qi Nurturing level 10? Chapter 17. Zhou Xuanji's face was calm. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and asked, "Is it very rare?" Seeing the old man's expression, as though he had seen a ghost, he felt good in his heart. Is it good to be a genius? Indeed. Qiu Beilei grabbed his shoulders and began to observe him, as though he was looking at a treasure. "Grandpa Qiu." At this moment, little Jiang Shui's voice came. She ran over with 2 dragon eagles. Qiu Beilei looked back, and when he saw the dragon eagles, he was stunned again. These 2 demons are unusual. I seem to have seen them somewhere before. Qiu Beilei thought. He did not expect that after he left for more than a year, these 2 little guys had tamed demonic beasts. Only when little Jiang Shui brought the 2 dragon eagles closer did he reveal a shocked expression. "Dragon eagles? How did you manage to obtain such a demonic beast cub?" Qiu Beilei was knowledgeable, and he quickly identified the origin of the 2 demons. Little Jiang Shui pointed at the 2 dragon eagles and smiled. "This one is called Big, and this one is called Small Air. They are a pair of brother and sister." Big, Small Air, Qiu Beilei shook his head and laughed. They were still children after all. Their names were really laughable. He seemed to have thought of something and solemnly said, "You must not act recklessly in the future. This kind of rare demonic beast will attract many demonic beasts to fight over it. A year ago, there was a group of cultivators fighting over an adult dragon eagle. There were casualties, and the infamous Yellow Gust 17 fiends were all killed in that battle. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow and asked, "The Yellow Gust 17 fiends are all dead? Didn't you say that these evil people were very powerful, not even weaker than you?" Xiao Bailey rubbed his head and smiled. It was all because of greed. There was also an important person in that battle. His name was Zhang Tianjian. He was a general of the Southern Snow Kingdom. He claimed that the dragon eagle cub was taken away by a powerful cultivator in the way of the sword. That powerful cultivator killed Madam Knight 7 of the Yellow Gust 17 fiends in an instant. His power was unfathomable. This is the power of a sword cultivator. The sword monarch of Great Zhou even defeated 7 empires with one strike. Xuanji, you must cultivate well. Do not let your talent in the way of the sword go to waste. At this point, Xiao Bailey stopped. Reaching Qi nurturing level 10 at the age of 6, it was obvious that Zhou Xuanji was not a lazy person. But then again, could it be that these 2 dragon eagles were left behind by that swordsman? Wait a minute. He suddenly remembered the traumatic memory of Zhou Xuanji killing Yi Fifan with a sneak attack. Zhou Xuanji was only 2 years old then. Xiao Bailey took in a deep breath again and withdrew his hand instinctively. He did not dare to touch Zhou Xuanji's head anymore. Little Jiang Shui blinked her eyes, wanting to say something but hesitating. Zhou Xuanji rubbed his chin and asked after some thought, "Grandpa Zhou, has the news spread?" "That's only natural. After all, the Yellow Gust 17 fiends are infamous. They are all ranked in the top 200 of the Great Zhou evil ranking." Xiao Bailey nodded and stared at him with a complicated gaze. "Xian Ji, tell me, is there another soul hidden in your body, and it's even older than me?" Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes at him and said, "That's right. There's a peerless demon sovereign hiding there that eats people." After saying that, he made a face at Xiao Bailey. Little Jiang Shui stood in front of Zhou Xuanji and snorted at Xiao Bailey. "Xuanji is not an old demon. If Zhou Xuanji was really an old demon, would he still be in such a sorry state when facing Madam Knight 7? Looking at the girl, Xiao Bailey shook his head with a bitter smile. What a silly girl. Big and Small Air also came over and were ready to attack Xiao Bailey. Xiao Bailey shrugged and sighed, "Even if I tell others about you, I don't think anyone will believe me. With your talent, you will definitely be able to participate in Great Zhou's heaven selection." He was simply too monstrous. Zhou Xuanji grasped the key word and asked, "What is Great Zhou's heaven selection?" Although he was born in the Great Zhou royal palace, he did not receive much information. After all, it was inconvenient for him to move around, and there were people watching over him. Great Zhou's heaven selection is held once every 10 years. It selects the most elite geniuses from the Great Zhou Empire and its subordinate kingdoms. It is different from the imperial examinations. Other than testing writing skills, it also tests one's actual battle prowess. Every heaven selection's top scholar can become a general or an official of the Great Zhou Empire. It is because of the cruelty of Great Zhou's heaven selection that the Great Zhou Empire is so powerful today. Once every 10 years, Great Zhou's heaven selection. Zhou Xuanji squinted his eyes and began to plan. The Empress lived in the palace for a long time and almost never left the Great Zhou Imperial Palace. If he wanted revenge, he could only enter the Great Zhou Imperial Palace. It was impossible to barge in by force. Enter through the Great Zhou heaven selection and then assassinate her? Zhou Xuanji felt that there was hope. After all, he could control his sword with his will. He could leave a legendary sword hidden in front of others and kill her with one strike in the middle of the night. Don't even think about it. It's so difficult to participate in Great Zhou's heaven selection. Either you have to be recommended by a powerful force, which even the hidden sword sect does not have, or you have to leave your name in the martial world and shake the world with your might to receive an invitation from the royal court, or you can be ranked on Great Zhou's hero ranking board. Xiao Bailey saw his expression and knew what he was thinking, so he spoke to discourage him. With his talent, it was best not to reveal his brilliance before he became someone great. Sometimes, it was not a good thing to be too talented. Zhou Xuanji nodded and walked to the side. He took out the frost wave sword and continued to practice the fiery sword technique. Seeing that he was not paying attention, Xiao Bailey shook his head. Shortly after, Xiao Bailey pulled little Jiang Shui back to the wooden hut. He wanted to hear her talk about how Zhou Xuanji killed Madam Knight 7. Little Jiang Shui narrated the story vividly. She did not scare Xiao Bailey, but a big and small heir, who trembled from time to time. The next evening, Zhou Xuanji had mastered the fiery sword will. Flames wrapped around his body and turned him into a flaming man. He slashed with his sword, and the burning sword Qi split the river. Xiao Bailey was dumbfounded. This brat practiced blindly and mastered another sword technique? Wasn't the heavens being too biased? With Xiao Bailey around, Zhou Xuanji did not take out any other legendary swords but focused on internalizing Qi to break through to foundation building as soon as possible. 3 months passed by in a flash. This day, Zhou Xuanji rode on a big and was prepared to find places with demons to train his combat power. 3 days ago, he tried to ride the dragon eagle and almost fell off at first. Fortunately, Xiao Bailey was with him. After 3 days of practice, he finally stabilized himself and built up a basic rapport with Ah Big. Looking at the backs of Ah Big and Zhou Xuanji, little Jiang Shui was envious. She turned to look at small heir. Xiao Bailey patted her head and smiled kindly. Shui, don't rush. Wait until your cultivation is higher, then you can try again. Zhou Xuanji had 2 sword wills, so Xiao Bailey was not worried that he would be in danger. But little Jiang Shui was different. She had just broken through to Qi nurturing level 5 and was still far from it. Not only him, but Zhou Xuanji was also worried. Okay. Little Jiang Shui nodded her head forcefully and continued her cultivation. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji, who was sitting on Ah Big's back, felt the strong wind blowing against his face. He was in a good mood. He looked down and saw that they were at least 1,000 meters above the ground. Chapter 18. Ah Big was a dragon eagle with the bloodline of a true dragon. It was more intelligent than ordinary demons, so it could understand some of Zhou Xuanji's hand gestures. Dragon eagles were good at flying. Among the demons of the same stage, their speed was above average. Although Ah Big was still small, his flying speed was already faster than Zhou Xuanji running on the ground. He flew for dozens of miles, and all the demons he encountered were just at the first rank, which was not much stronger than ferocious beasts. Demons had cultivation levels too. Commonly, they were divided into 10 ranks. The first rank was equivalent to the human Qi nurturing stage, the second rank was equivalent to the human foundation building stage, the third rank was equivalent to the human enlightening stage, and so on. A day passed, and he still did not find a suitable whetstone. When night fell, he rode Ah Big back to the wooden hut. After knowing about Zhou Xuanji's encounter today, Xiao Bailey stroked his long beard and said with a smile, You still want to meet more powerful demons. You really don't want to live anymore. Tomorrow, you will go upstream along this river. At the end, there is a mountain range called Fallen Celestial Ridge. There are traces of many second-rank demons, and even third-rank demons. Do what you can. He was not worried about Zhou Xuanji. This brat killed Yi Fifan and Madam Knight 7. How could an ignorant demon be his match? He could also see that Zhou Xuanji's cultivation had already reached the pinnacle of Qi nurturing. If not for the fact that his body was not fully grown, he might have broken through at any time. It was not bad to let him go out and train. Zhou Xuanji nodded and looked forward to fallen Celestial Ridge. Xuanji, tomorrow, Grandpa Qiu will teach me spells. I will learn the blood healing spell first, so that I can heal you in the future. Little Jiang Shui suddenly hugged his neck and giggled. She looked excited. Okay, little nanny. Zhou Xuanji replied with a smile, but in his heart, can you not attack suddenly? Can't you see that I'm thinking about something? Qiu Bailey stared at him and said, the previous mission affected the Hidden Sword sect greatly. I will accompany you for half a year at most, and then I have to return to the sect. It will be difficult for me to see you again. Are you really not willing to go with me? Putting aside Zhou Xuanji's precocious and scheming nature, he really liked him and little Jiang Shui. He could not bear for them to wander around. Zhou Xuanji looked at her and said, Sister, do you want to go? When I grow up, I will go to the Hidden Sword sect to find you. He actually wanted to go to the Hidden Sword sect, but he was afraid of being discovered. There were countless capable people in the great Zhou dynasty. Even the slightest movement could be known by the Empress. After all, this was not ancient Wuxia, but a mythical world. Zhou Xuanji had to be careful. He did not know if he had the main character's halo, so it was always good to be cautious. Hearing this, little Jiang Shui immediately shook her head and said, if I leave, who's going to wash, sew and cook for you? If you're injured and can't move your hand, I can help you. Zhou Xuanji patted her head with a smile. Qiu Bailey couldn't help but laugh when he saw a 6-year-old touching a 10-year-old's head. Little devil, although I don't know what your background is, judging from your attitude, it's probably not a good thing. Let me give you a word of advice. Qiu Bailey chuckled as he stroked his beard, looking like an old man trying to reason with him. He knew Zhou Xuanji's name, but he did not associate him with the young prince of Great Zhou, because he did not know the prince's name. The difference in status was too great. Endure for a moment and you can fight for 1,000 years. Take a step back and you'll see the world. You have extraordinary talent, so you need to know how to endure. Qiu Bailey said seriously. He could see that Zhou Xuanji had a vicious aura in his bones. He was afraid that after killing Madam Knight 7, this brat's ego would become inflated and he would fail miserably. Zhou Xuanji curled his lip and said, I feel that the more I endure, the angrier I get. The more I take a step back, the more I lose. My life principle is to take revenge on the spot, not to be a gentleman. Qiu Bailey heard him and could not help but feel angry. He glared at him and snorted, what nonsense are you talking about? Little Jiang Shui could not help but cover her mouth and laugh. Zhou Xuanji changed the topic and asked, is the Hidden Sword sect in trouble? Qiu Bailey sighed and said, it's because the Southern Snow Kingdom and the Ocean Kingdom are about to go to war. Yi Fifan came to the Southern Snow Kingdom to gather information, but unfortunately, he died in your hands. Zhou Xuanji was confused and asked, the Great Zhou Empire doesn't care? There was no reason for the Great Zhou Empire to sit back and do nothing when 2 of its followers were fighting. The empire rarely participates in wars between kingdoms. As long as the people are not plunged into misery and suffering, they will turn a blind eye to it. Only by competing with each other can the kingdoms grow stronger. Qiu Bailey replied, his face full of worry. If the Hidden Sword sect joined the war, many disciples would die. As an elder, he could not stay out of it. Zhou Xuanji did not ask further. The war between kingdoms had nothing to do with him. The 3 of them chatted for a while and went to rest. The next morning, Zhou Xuanji rode on a big and flew toward fallen Celestial Ridge. The river that ran through the plain looked neither wide nor deep, but it was very long. He only saw the mountain forest after flying for an hour and a half. The fallen Celestial Ridge was huge, blocking the plain here. As the weather entered winter, some of the mountains were already covered in ice and snow. Before he entered the fallen celestial ridge, Zhou Xuanji could already smell the demonic qi. Now that he had reached the 10th level of qi nurturing, his senses were extremely sensitive, and he could easily identify the demonic qi. After he entered the fallen celestial ridge, he asked Abig to land. He took out the frost wave sword and walked forward slowly. He had 5 swords now, and the one he was most familiar with was the frost wave sword. The other 4 swords were his trump cards. Soon, he set his eyes on his first target. It was a wild boar that was as strong as a buffalo. Its tusks were long and sharp, like those of an elephant. Very good, you will be the first wild beast. Zhou Xuanji smiled and walked forward with his sword. Deep in the fallen celestial ridge, there were 5 connected mountains. The mountains were dyed white by the snow, and a group of young cultivators was walking forward. The one walking at the front was a handsome young man. He was dressed in white and held a folding fan in his hand. He did not feel cold in the heavy snow and still looked elegant. Behind him were 16 disciples from the same sect. They were all dressed in white with the word "wind" printed on their backs. Senior brother Luli, how much longer do we have to walk? A female disciple asked with a trembling voice as she crossed her arms. The handsome young man, who was addressed as Senior Brother Luli, turned around and smiled warmly, soon. Junior brothers and sisters, stay alert. When we reach Frost Thunder Mountain, we will surely meet disciples from the other sections. We must obtain the Frost Thunder crystals and not bring shame to the Wind Xian sect's name. Frost Thunder Mountain, Frost Thunder crystals. The group of Wind Xian sect disciples perked up, slapped their faces, and continued forward. At the same time, on the other mountains nearby, many disciples were also moving forward. They were all heading in the same direction. Boom! Bolts of lightning flashed in the sea of clouds. The heavy snow that filled the sky could not block the might of the lightning. Right below them was a mountain that was 600 meters tall. It was covered in white snow, and lightning could be vaguely seen flashing on the top of the mountain. Many skeletal birds perched around it. These skeletal birds were as white as their names, and their bodies were like adult geese. This was Frost Thunder Mountain. Chapter 19. It's been a long time since I last visited the Ice Thunder Mountain. The man in black raised his head and muttered to himself, letting the snowflakes fall on his face. 22 years ago, he followed his master to Frost Thunder Mountain. In the end, his master was eaten by a demon. He relied on his master's sword to hide in a cave and survived. For the next 10 years, he taught himself swordsmanship and finally mastered it. After he exited the cave, he slaughtered all the demon beasts on Frost Thunder Mountain before he left to vent his hatred. In the blink of an eye, 12 years had passed, and he had already made a name for himself in the southern Snow Kingdom. Frost Swordsman Cheng Yefei. The blade of the sword was unsheathed, and frost appeared everywhere. This time, I want the Frost Thunder Crystal. After saying this, Cheng Yefei stepped up the mountain. 2 hours later. More than 300 cultivators gathered on the mountainside of the Ice Thunder Mountain. Luli and the disciples of the Wind Xian school stood together, Cheng Yefei stood alone in a corner, and so did the disciples of the other sections. There was no communication between them, and the atmosphere was a little heavy. They looked up as if they were looking at something. A female disciple of the Wind Xian school asked Luli in a low voice, "Brother Luli, will the Frost Thunder spheres really appear? What if the time is wrong? Won't we have to wait forever?" It was her first time going out on a mission, so she was very nervous. It was not only him. It was the first time for the other disciples to go out as well. Luli's task was to protect them. Luli smiled and said, "Patience is the biggest thing you can rely on in the future. Whether it's doing quests or fighting, you must have patience. However, these people look like they are not to be trifled with. Some are clearly not the young disciples of the various sections. A male disciple of the Wind Xian Gate said carefully. His voice was very soft, afraid that others would hear him. On hearing this, Lu Li burst into laughter, which attracted the attention of all the cultivators around, including Cheng Yefei. Lu Li smiled lightly and said, "With me around, no one can compete with the Wind Xian Gate." How arrogant! The expressions of the cultivators instantly turned cold. The disciples of the Wind Xian school, on the other hand, were impressed by Lu Li's heroic spirit. He was indeed the eldest brother, so domineering. Humph! Cheng Yefei snorted coldly, his eyes filled with disdain. At this moment, a small figure slowly climbed up the mountainside. It was Zhou Xuanji. Da was left outside the icy region. The reason why he had come was because he had sensed an extremely attractive aura. According to the sword spirit, it should be an energy substance that could strengthen his golden body technique. This was the power of the golden body secret art. It could sense some special energy of heaven and earth. Zhou Xuanji hid behind an ice rock and looked out. He was a little surprised. Why are there so many cultivators? Are they all here for the treasure? He noticed that half of these cultivators were in the Qi-nourishing realm, but the weakest was at Qi-nourishing level 7. Now that he had 4 divine swords and 2 types of sword wills, coupled with his powerful body, he was confident that he could fight. Xiao! A throwing knife pierced into the ice rock in front of Zhou Xuanji, and the entire ice rock trembled slightly. Who? Come out, you coward! A blue-robed young man shouted in a deep voice, causing everyone to turn their heads to look. Zhou Xuanji snorted coldly and got up slowly. He raised his hands and walked around the ice boulder. He looked terrified and said with a trembling voice, "Don't kill me, I'm only 6 years old." "I don't want to die." The 6-year-old child looked harmless. In addition to the ice and snow, his little face was red from the cold. Some of the female disciples' hearts melted at the sight of him. Such an adorable child. This child looks so delicate. Why is he here? Maybe he got lost with his parents. Wah, I really want to pinch his face. Let's be careful. Maybe he's a demon in disguise? The young cultivators discussed among themselves, while the leaders of each sect stared at Zhou Xuanji cautiously. This was the fallen celestial ridge. It was so far away from human villages that an ordinary 6-year-old child could not even reach this place. However, they did not sense any demonic qi from Zhou Xuanji, which meant that he was not a demon in disguise. The blue-robed young man who swung the knife earlier continued to interrogate him. "Kid, where are your parents?" Zhou Xuanji swallowed his saliva, and tears flowed down his face instantly. He raised his trembling right hand and pointed at a flock of corpse birds on the peak of Frost Thunder Mountain. "They ate them!" he cried. Seeing the tearful Zhou Xuanji, many cultivators dispelled their worries. Their highest cultivation was only at foundation building. They had not mastered their mind, so they could not see through Zhou Xuanji's cultivation. Moreover, they were in a world of ice and snow, so they could not sense Zhou Xuanji's spirit energy at all. "Kid, come here. I will bring you back to the Wind Xian sect." Lu Li waved his hand and smiled warmly. His smile was like a spring breeze, and in the hearts of the Wind Xian sect's female disciples, his image became even more lofty. Just when Zhou Xuanji was about to speak, thunder came from the top of the mountain. Compared to the previous thunder, this time, it was louder and more deafening, like an explosion. Everyone looked up and saw a powerful blue beam of light at the top of Frost Thunder Mountain, surrounded by countless lightning bolts. The distance between the middle of the mountain and the top was more than a kilometer. Cheng Yefei was the first to move. His body was as agile as a rabbit as he treaded on the snow. "The Frost Thunder Sphere has appeared. Let's go up." A cultivator shouted loudly, and the rest of the cultivators rushed up the mountain. Lu Li and a group of male disciples from the Wind Xian sect also rushed up the mountain, leaving a few female disciples to wait. Zhou Xuanji jogged over. Frost Thunder Sphere? It sounded very powerful. At this moment, a petite and cute female disciple stopped him. She squatted in front of him and hugged him. "Little brother, don't be afraid. I will protect you. Are you cold?" She comforted him. Zhou Xuanji's face was covered by a layer of softness, and he almost suffocated. He quickly broke free. The other female disciples came over and surrounded Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji leaped up immediately. The frost wave sword appeared under his feet out of nowhere, and he dashed up the mountain. The female disciples looked up and were dumbfounded. None of them could say a word. "Humph, trying to take advantage of me?" Zhou Xuanji rubbed his face and could still feel a trace of warmth. Next, he began to increase his speed and flew toward the top of the mountain. The frost wave sword carried him over the heads of the cultivators. Those cultivators looked up and were almost scared to death on the spot. "That kid! He can fly. How can it be? Hiss, demon child. Where did he get the sword from? He can still fly on a sword in such cold weather. He can stabilize himself." The cultivators cried out in surprise. The snow on the Frost Thunder Mountain was too heavy. It was easy for them to fall if they relied on their flying enchanted artifacts. After all, their cultivation was not high. Cheng Yefei was at the front, followed by Lu Li. Both of them heard cries of surprise behind them, and they turned around instinctively. They happened to see a 6-year-old boy bent over on a silver sword. He flew through the air at an extremely fast speed. Zhou Xuanji was already completely familiar with the 4 legendary swords. The Frost Wave Sword's attribute was Cold Qi. The heavier the snowstorm, the more powerful the Frost Wave Sword. Demon? Chapter 20. What was I doing when I was 6? A scene appeared in Cheng Yefei's mind. At that time, he was flying a kite happily. For some reason, Lu Li thought back to when he was 6 years old. He was peeking at his master and taking a bath. Although both of them were frightened by Zhou Xuanji, they did not slow down at all. They were very close to the top of the mountain. The two of them were less than 3 body lengths apart, and Cheng Yefei was still in front. Zhou Xuanji could only see Cheng Yefei and Lu Li. The cultivators who had been surpassed by Zhou Xuanji all looked shocked. How could this be? They were so frightened that they couldn't even speak. They gritted their teeth and rushed forward with all their might. Zhou Xuanji could already see the scene at the top of the mountain. Countless bolts of lightning were wantonly twisting about, which looked extremely terrifying. His heart suddenly trembled. Would he be struck into ashes? However, Cheng Yefei and Lu Li had no intention of slowing down. How could they not be afraid? Those lightning bolts are not dangerous. Even if an ordinary person were to encounter them, they would not die. The sword spirit's voice resounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind, which made him heave a sigh of relief. He immediately sped up. The frost wave sword absorbed the cold air in the wind and snow and sped up. It flew over Lu Li's head directly. Lu Li's pupils contracted and his expression froze. Cheng Yefei was next. His speed was about the same as Lu Li's, but he had the advantage. Naturally, he could not outrun Zhou Xuanji. This monster, Cheng Yefei gritted his teeth, his eyes bloodshot. When the frost wave sword flew over the top of the mountain, Zhou Xuanji leaped, somersaulted, and landed elegantly. He turned his head and saw the frost thunder seed. The peak of the mountain was a flat land with rocks piled up on the edge. It was about the size of a basketball court. The frost thunder orb was in the center, looking like 3 blue crystals, each as big as an adult's fist. They floated in the air, flashing a dazzling blue light. Countless lightning bolts interweaved on the surface of the blue light. Without a word, Zhou Xuanji came to the frost thunder crystals with the 8-step sword lunge. He waved his right hand and stored the 3 crystals into the supreme storage. Thud. Thud. Cheng Yefei and Lu Li reached the top one after another. Lu Li ran to the other side and flanked Zhou Xuanji with Cheng Yefei. The ice and thunder seeds disappeared, and the blue light and lightning also retreated, leaving only wind and snow dancing freely. Hand over the frost thunder crystals, or I'll bury you in this world of ice and snow. Cheng Yefei said in a low voice, his eyes filled with rage. Zhou Xuanji pretended to be an ignorant child, which was really hateful. With a long sword in his hand, Lu Li narrowed his eyes and threatened, "Who are you? To actually possess the body of a 6-year-old child, how cruel. Today, I will enforce justice on behalf of the heavens." Zhou Xuanji raised his right hand, and the frost wave sword fell from the sky into his hand. He smiled and said, "I'm not taking over your body. I'm just too talented. What do you mortals know?" Lu Li's face twitched. He was a genius of the Wind Xian sect. This was the first time he was called a mortal. Cheng Yefei unsheathed his sword. The sword light shone on his face, causing his expression to become even colder. He said, "Since you are not willing to hand it over, then we shall use our swords to determine who is better." Just to my liking. Zhou Xuanji was excited in his heart. He had already reached Qi nurturing level 10 and was half a step into foundation building. Moreover, he was proficient in 2 sword wills, so he could use these 2 foundation building cultivators to test his strength. He took the lead and stepped out, using the 8-sword lunge. Each step was 30 feet. His right hand shook the sword, and the cold air was like a knife, scraping Cheng Yefei's face. Cheng Yefei raised his sword instinctively to block, but he could only feel a white crane flying toward his face. With his quick reflexes, he managed to block the slash. Zhou Xuanji moved his body and came behind Cheng Yefei, slashing horizontally. He was short and only reached Cheng Yefei's waist, which made it difficult for Cheng Yefei. He had to bend down to block the attack. Lu Li charged forward with his sword and joined the battle. Clang! 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 The 3 of them crossed each other. The sound of their swords clashing was so clear that even the wind and snow could not cover it. With his small body, Zhou Xuanji was extremely agile. He weaved back and forth between the 2 of them, like a white crane, very light. Cheng Yefei and Lu Li were complaining in their hearts. For some reason, their sword hilts were extremely cold. They could only use their spirit energy to resist the bone-piercing chill. Even so, the speed at which they swung their swords was greatly reduced. This was the power of the frost wave sword. Zhou Xuanji, on the other hand, was very happy. The feeling of giving it his all was really satisfying. He relied on the white crane sword technique and the frost wave sword to take on the 2 foundation building cultivators. Wait! Could this be? Cheng Yefei suddenly thought of something, and waves of shock surged in his heart. Not only him, but Lu Li also understood. The 2 of them looked at each other as they attacked Zhou Xuanji. With just a glance, they understood each other. Shock. Unbelievable. Fear. This 6-year-old kid was proficient in sword will. The 2 of them jumped back almost at the same time, distancing themselves from Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji's sword missed and was immediately unhappy. He pouted his lips. "What sword technique is that?" Cheng Yefei asked, gritting his teeth. He was unwilling to give up. He wanted to achieve sword will even in his dreams. Zhou Xuanji pointed his sword at him and laughed, "White crane sword technique." These 2 guys were full of killer moves. They were definitely not kind. "What sword?" "Frost wave sword." "Who are you?" None of your business. Cheng Yefei took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. Lu Li could not hold it in anymore. He stared at Zhou Xuanji and said, I am Lu Li from the Wind Xian sect. I hope my little friend can give me some face. Just one frost thunder crystal, and I will owe you one. Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and asked casually, who do you think you are? You seem to be fearless. Which sect are you from? Ancestral sect. You, shut up. Lu Li almost vomited blood. Why does this kid have no EQ at all? Is he not afraid of offending the Wind Xian sect? At this moment, Zhou Xuanji leaped up and threw out the Frost Wave Sword. The Frost Wave Sword spun in the air and landed under his feet. It carried him up into the sky. The entire process was fast and elegant. Lu Li slashed with his sword, but his sword chi could not catch up to the Frost Wave Sword. Cheng Yefei chased him to the edge of the cliff. He looked at Zhou Xuanji's back and roared furiously, who are you? I'm your father. Zhou Xuanji's voice came from the horizon and got further and further away. Cheng Yefei's expression was gloomy. He slammed the ground with his palm and shattered the rocks beside his feet. The cultivators on the slope looked at each other in dismay. They all knew how powerful Cheng Yefei and Lu Li were. One was the Frost Swordsman, and the other was the eldest disciple of the Wind Xian sect. They could not deal with a 6-year-old kid? No. This guy was definitely not a 6-year-old kid, but a demon. The cold wind howled. Zhou Xuanji sat on the Frost Wave Sword and played with the Frost Thunder Crystal in his hand. He could feel the violent energy contained in the Frost Thunder Crystal. If he absorbed it, he would definitely break through to the foundation building stage and master the second level of the Golden Body incantation, Iron Body. Now that his strength had exceeded 10,000 pounds, he should be invincible in the Qi nurturing stage. One must know that at the 5th or 6th level of the Qi nurturing stage, one could dominate the martial arts world. This is not a loss. Zhou Xuanji thought happily. Once he broke through to the foundation building stage, his power would increase tremendously. Chapter 21. In a city in the southern Snow Kingdom. Inside the inn, the aroma of wine permeated the air. That day, the Frost Thunder Mountain was filled with heavy snow, and the sound of it hitting people's faces made it impossible to see the road in front of them. The heroes of various sects gathered here to fight for the legendary treasure, the Frost Thunder Seed. Even the Frost Sword Master Cheng Yefei came. A storyteller waved his fan and smiled. Around him sat rows of diners, listening to him talk about the Jianghu. The Frost Thunder Seed had not appeared yet, so the cultivators could only wait. But a 6-year-old child sneaked up to them. A disciple of the Iron Fist faction noticed him in time and used a flying knife to force the child to show himself. When the disciples saw him, they saw that he was a handsome child. He didn't look like a threat at all. The diners listened attentively while eating melon seeds. In the corner of the first floor of the inn, a man and a woman sat facing each other. There was only a plate of sliced beef on the table. The man was handsome and wore a beautiful blue robe. He obviously came from a wealthy family. The woman wore a white dress and a veil. Her skin was fair, and her eyes were mesmerizing. She made people's imaginations run wild. It seems that Zhao Xian's son is indeed dead. The man said with a look of pity. The woman in the white dress looked up at him and said, Xiao Qingfeng, you don't want him to die. Xiao Qingfeng shrugged and said, Her Majesty the Empress has instructed me to not care about what I think. I am just a knife. The woman in the white dress did not speak again. The two were silent, each thinking about their own things. The storyteller was still talking. When he talked about the battle at the Frost Thunder Mountain, his tone was sometimes low and sometimes excited. The diners around him were nervous. When he finished, the diners still wanted to continue. A greasy middle-aged man snorted, "Bullsh *t. How can a 6-year-old be so powerful?" As soon as he said that, the others joined in. "Yeah, I couldn't even read when I was 6. Oldly, storytellers nowadays are getting better and better. Are you getting cocky or is the wine cheap? The Frost Swordsman is a Foundation establishment cultivator. No matter how talented a 6-year-old is, he can't beat him. Yeah, do you know what a Foundation establishment cultivator means? His strength alone is more than 10,000 pounds. He can easily knock down a mud wall." Faced with the crowd's jeering, the storyteller's face turned red. He snorted coldly and put away the folding fan in his hand. He said righteously, "When did I lie? Go out and ask around. The news about the Ice Thunder Mountain's demon child has already spread everywhere. There are even many sects that have specially sent people to search for his traces." Hearing this, Xiao Qingfeng pondered and murmured, if Zhao Xian's son was still alive, he would be 6 years old now. The woman's eyelashes fluttered as she calmly asked, "What do you mean?" Xiao Qingfeng smiled and said, "Even if this matter is exaggerated, if my son is really 6 years old, he is not someone the dynasty can raise. Lady Zhishui, you must understand that it's best for Zhao Xian's son to die. Otherwise, it will implicate Consort Chen and Princess Ling Ling." Lady Zhao Xian's matter had enraged Emperor Yan of Zhou, and it was a serious matter. Not only was the Empress investigating this matter, but other important figures in the Great Zhou Empire were also investigating this matter. They all knew how powerful vengeance was. Prince Xuanji must die. Lady Zhishui took a deep breath, got up and said, "Let's go to the fallen celestial ridge." 10 days had passed since the battle on Frost Thunder Mountain. Zhou Xuanji did not go out again but hid in the plain. When Qiu Bailey knew that he took the Frost Thunder crystal from the 2 foundation building cultivators, his eyes almost popped out. This time, it was not a sneak attack, nor was it a precarious situation. It was a fair and square battle. Is this brat already so powerful? That day, Qiu Bailey was shocked by Zhou Xuanji again. Until today, Zhou Xuanji had already absorbed 1 Frost Thunder crystal and was about to break through to foundation building. The way to use the Frost Thunder crystal was the same as spirit stones. Hold it in one's hand and activate the energy technique, and it will automatically absorb the energy contained in one's body. Whoosh! Spiritual qi flowed into Zhou Xuanji's body from all directions, forming a whirlwind above his head. Little Jiang Shui stood 10 meters away, clasped her hands in front of her chest, and prayed for Zhou Xuanji. According to Qiu Bailey, the path of cultivation was intertwined with fortune and misfortune. Every time one broke through to a new stage, one would encounter all sorts of difficulties. Many cultivators died during their breakthroughs. Don't worry, this brat is very lucky. Qiu Bailey stroked his long beard and said with a smile. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji was getting stronger day by day, he was amazed and relieved at the same time. After he left, Zhou Xuanji would continue to live well. Maybe the next time they met, this 6-year-old child would already be famous all over the world. Pak pak ka, Zhou Xuanji's body suddenly produced a clear explosive sound, which made little Jiang Shui nervous immediately. Qiu Bailey squinted his eyes and mumbled, "Iron bones, this brat was indeed a dual cultivator of energy and physique." While cultivating the physique, one's cultivation could also increase rapidly. People were really different. Soon, Zhou Xuanji's spirit energy suddenly increased tremendously. A wave of aura exploded, stirring up the grass on the ground and creating green waves. Foundation Building Level 1. Zhou Xuanji finally broke through. He could feel that the spirit energy in his body had turned from a small stream into a big river. His body was filled with energy. This feeling made him want to roar. 6 years old, foundation building. He had finally achieved the goal he set for himself. He did not lose face. In his excitement, Zhou Xuanji jumped up suddenly. The Frost Wave sword appeared in his left hand, and the Crimson Dragon sword in his right. He executed the 8-step sword lunge, the White Crane sword technique in his left hand, and the Fiery sword technique in his right. His body moved continuously, and the sword flashed. Swoosh! 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 Zhou Xuanji's sword dance was swift and fierce. Qi-nurturing cultivators could not keep up with his speed at all. It was like a white crane spreading its wings, and sparks were faintly discernible. Two-handed sword? 2 different sword techniques? Xiao Bailey opened his eyes wide, as though he had seen a ghost. He had been warning himself not to be shocked by this brat, but in the end, little Jiang Shui opened her mouth slightly, and her eyes were wide open. Although she could not understand, she felt that Zhou Xuanji had suddenly become more powerful. It was like an ordinary person suddenly becoming a martial arts master. The contrast between before and after could create a strong visual impact and shock to the soul. At the same time, Zhou Xuanji had already fallen into a mysterious state. He could not explain it clearly. Ding! Congratulations, the sword owner has learned to multitask. Because the sword owner has broken through to foundation building, gacha begins. Ding! Congratulations, the sword owner has obtained, Iron, Swine-culling sword, Qi obscuring incantation, 100 pieces of level 3 spirit stones. The sword spirit's voice resounded continuously in Zhou Xuanji's mind, but his consciousness was still in the state of enlightenment, so he did not notice. His sword moved faster and faster, and his posture was elegant and had the aura of a grandmaster. Xiao Bailey's eyes were blurred as he watched, and he mumbled continuously. It was as though Zhou Xuanji was swinging his sword too fast, and the sound of the wind was too loud. Little Jiang Shui could not hear what Xiao Bailey was saying. She moved closer to Xiao Bailey and listened carefully. Chapter 22. Little Jiang Shui shook Xiao Bailey's arm to wake him up. Grandfather, what do you mean by the power of a grandmaster? He will definitely become a sword emperor? Little Jiang Shui asked curiously. It was not the first time that she saw Xiao Bailey shocked by Zhou Xuanji. In her heart, Zhou Xuanji was already an unparalleled genius who would surely become an immortal in the future. Xiao Bailey looked at Zhou Xuanji with a complicated look in his eyes and said faintly, "There are countless ways to cultivate immortality in the world. Although the sword is the most common weapon and enchanted artifact, very few people walk the path of the true way of the sword. Those who achieve great accomplishment in the way of the sword can roam the world freely. Within the same realm, sword cultivators who are proficient in sword intent are generally stronger than other cultivators. Since ancient times, there have been 9 great sword emperors, and all of them were super experts that suppressed an era. Xuanji comprehended 2 sword intents at the age of 6. Such talent is unheard of. In time, he might become like the current sword emperor, and his name will forever be recorded in the river of history." Little Jiang Shui exclaimed in surprise. Although she did not understand, she felt that it was very powerful. If Zhou Xuanji became the most powerful person in the world, she would not have to hide anymore. As for the 9 major sword emperors, Xiao Bailey had only read about them in the sect's ancient books. After all, he was only at the inner pellet realm. He did not know much about the northern wilderness region, let alone the entire world. But he believed that not many people in the world could have Zhou Xuanji's talent. If there was, he couldn't see it anyway. Not long after, Zhou Xuanji sheathed his sword and looked down at his hands. His skin had a faint metallic texture. He had finally mastered the 2nd level of the Golden Body incantation, Iron Bone. With a thought, lines of tiny words appeared in front of him. Sword owner, Zhou Xuanji race, Great Zhou royal bloodline cultivation, Foundation Building Realm Level 1 Cultivation Method, Golden Body Incantation Sword Art, White Crane Sword Art, Fiery Sword Art, 8-Step Sword Steps, Supernatural Power, None, Talent, Doing 2 Things at Once Swords, Silver, Scarlet Dragon Sword, Bronze, Frost Wave Sword, Silver, Bloodbath Sword, Bronze, Tiger War Sword, Bronze, Wind Cutter Sword, Black Iron, Swineculling Sword. His attribute list now looked gorgeous. There was even a new talent on the list. Multitasking? It sounded a little useless. Wait a minute. Pig Slaughtering Sword? Zhou Xuanji's gaze was attracted by the name of the last legendary sword. This name was quite awesome. With a thought, the swine-culling sword appeared in his hand. At first glance, it looked like a lengthened kitchen knife. Its 2 edges were sharp, and its entire body was black and swarthy. Compared to other divine swords, it was extremely ugly. The lines of words in front of him had also changed. Sword name, Swineculling Sword Grade, Iron, Description. A pig-slaughtering godly sword was created after slaughtering millions of pigs. It can cut through bones like mud. Under its ordinary appearance lies a terrifying danger. Slaughter 1,000,000 pigs for a single gamble? Who was so free? Zhou Xuanji was speechless. Shortly after, he placed the swine-culling sword into the supreme storage and began receiving the chi-obscuring incantation. Why did he take out a kitchen knife? Xiao Bailey noticed the swine-culling sword and was a little suspicious, but he didn't go forward to ask. He shook his head and turned to leave. Ever since Zhou Xuanji obtained the Frost Thunder crystals, he had been feeling uneasy. He always felt that something big was going to happen. Little Jiang Shui moved to Zhou Xuanji's side and realized that he was filthy and smelly. After he broke through to the foundation building stage, his spiritual qi flushed his meridians and expelled all the impurities in his body through his pores. It was as if he had an extra layer of sweat and mud. So dirty. Little Jiang Shui pinched her nose with one hand and waved her other hand in front of her. She did not walk away. She planned to wash his body after he woke up. A while later, Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes, and a tinge of joy flashed in his eyes. The chi-obscuring incantation was just an ordinary spell. It was used to conceal one's chi and hide one's cultivation. This spell was definitely a divine spell for Zhou Xuanji. Once he hid his spirit energy, others would treat him like an ordinary child. The chi-obscuring incantation was easy to cultivate, and he could pass it on to little Jiang Shui. Come, let's go take a bath. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji had opened his eyes, little Jiang Shui carried him and walked toward the river. Zhou Xuanji quickly struggled and jumped out of her arms. He blushed and said angrily, "Don't carry me like this next time." It was fine when there was no one around, but Xiao Bailey was watching from afar. Little Jiang Shui giggled, "Why? Little brother has grown up? You don't recognize me as your big sister anymore? When you were young, you would act like a spoiled child if I didn't carry you." Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes at her and said, "Of course, I'm almost 7. After that, he turned around and jumped into the river. He had just broken through, and he felt uncomfortable all over. Little Jiang Shui covered her mouth and could not stop giggling. She then walked toward the wooden hut to prepare clothes for him. On that day, Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui learned the chi-obscuring incantation. Xiao Bailey sat by the riverside alone. No one knew what he was thinking, but he did not sleep the whole night. The next day, he woke Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui up at dawn. Zhou Xuanji pushed away the little feet on his face, rubbed his eyes, and mumbled, "Disturbing my sleep so early in the morning, how immoral." Ever since they had a big and small heir, they could sleep without worry. Once there was danger, the 2 dragon eagles would cry out. Xiao Bailey's mouth twitched, and he shouted, "The Yellow Gust 17 fiends are here." Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui shuddered and jumped up from the wooden bed reflexively. The two children looked left and right, but the yellow gust 17 fiends were nowhere to be seen. Grandpa! Little Jiang Shui said angrily, and Zhou Xuanji's eyes were spitting fire. Xiao Bailey said with a straight face, we have to leave, or else we will be in trouble. The frost thunder crystals are of great importance, and it was taken away by a 6-year-old kid like you. It will surely attract the attention of the sects in the southern Snow Kingdom. Zhou Xuanji heard him and immediately came to his senses. He was not afraid of the sects in the southern Snow Kingdom, but he was afraid of attracting the attention of the Empress. Before he matured, he must develop in a cowardly manner. Let's go. Without another word, Zhou Xuanji asked little Jiang Shui to start packing. Xiao Bailey was amused. He even prepared a speech to persuade Zhou Xuanji. He did not expect this kid to be so afraid of death. After packing for a while, Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui rode on a big and rose into the sky. Small air followed closely behind. Xiao Bailey led the way in front, and they were heading in the opposite direction of fallen Celestial Ridge. Sister, hold me tight. If we fall, we will die a horrible death. Zhou Xuanji laughed loudly, which frightened little Jiang Shui so much that she quickly hugged his waist tightly. Even though he was fleeing, he would find joy in hardship. After all, he had lived 2 lives. Are you going to die? Ah, big, slow down. Little Jiang Shui pressed her head against the back of Zhou Xuanji's head and cried continuously. Xiao Bailey was amused by them and laughed. He suddenly felt that it was quite fun to follow Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui. On the 3rd day after they left, someone came to this plain. It was Xiao Qingfeng and Ms. Jishui. The two came to the riverside and stopped. Xiao Qingfeng took out a bamboo bottle from his storage bag and poured out a black-purple ladybug. He then took out a gray cloth with his other hand and placed it in front of the ladybug. What is this? Ms. Jishui asked curiously. Prince Xuanji's diaper. Chapter 23. Riding on the Dragon Eagle, their traveling speed was much faster than before. In less than half a day, they had traveled thousands of miles. But Xiao Bailey did not stop and continued on his journey. He was going to return to the Hidden Sword sect soon after all, so he wanted to bring Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui to a safe place first. This was something that he could do. The two of them had to walk their own path in the future. They flew continuously for 7 days. They made a detour to the Gulan Forest on the other side of the southern Snow Kingdom. The Gulan Forest was the largest mountain range around the southern Snow Kingdom. There were countless demons, and it was a training ground for many cultivators. They landed in a valley that was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. The top was covered by leaves, so it was impossible to spy on this place from above. The valley entrance was very narrow, and it was shrouded in mist, so it was impossible to see the situation inside. There was a stone stele at the entrance, and there were 9 half-moon-shaped stones on it. Xiao Bailey led Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui over. In front of the stone stele, he reminded them, I have placed a restrictive spell on this valley. If you enter without permission, you will be attacked by the miasma, and your whole body will be paralyzed. Those with weaker cultivation will die on the spot. You must remember the sequence of activating the spell. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, let's begin. I have a photographic memory. Xiao Bailey immediately moved the 9 mechanism stones, but in different directions and at different angles. He paused for every stone he moved, so that Zhou Xuanji and little Jiang Shui could remember it. After the spell formation was activated, the miasma at the valley entrance dissipated at a speed visible to the naked eye. Zhou Xuanji immediately went up and tried a few times. He saw the miasma recede and rise again, then recede again. He suddenly thought of a problem, a very serious problem. Will the miasma run out? Xiao Bailey rubbed his head and replied with a smile, don't worry. The miasma comes from within the mountain. I have planted a few types of rare herbs that can last for 100 years. With your temperament, you will probably leave in less than 20 years. Zhou Xuanji heard him and was immediately relieved. He activated the mechanism again and walked in with little Jiang Shui. After going around the small path, they saw the mechanism again. According to his calculations, the mechanism path was 30 meters long, and there were many demon corpses along the way. There was a pavilion in the valley, and in front of the pavilion was a pond. The pond was so clear that the bottom could be seen, and there were many small fish swimming in it. The walls of the mountain were covered with moss and all kinds of plants, giving off the feeling of a paradise. Wow! Little Jiang Shui cried out in surprise and immediately pulled Zhou Xuanji over. Ada and Little Air also began to chase and play. Xiao Bailey stroked his beard and laughed complacently. Back then, I spent a month cleaning up this place. However, Zhou Xuanji and Little Jiang Shui did not listen to him. They were already wandering around. Out of desperation, he began to inspect the valley in case any powerful demonic beasts or poisonous insects were hiding. Fortunately, there were no hidden dangers in the valley. At this point, they finally stopped rushing around. At night, one could see the moon and stars through the gaps between the leaves at the top of the valley. Even without an oil lamp, the moonlight shone into the valley. Zhou Xuanji made a swing. He and little Jiang Shui sat on it, swaying as they looked at the night sky. This place is pretty good. I hope we don't have to run away anymore. Little Jiang Shui hugged Zhou Xuanji and giggled. Zhou Xuanji felt very uncomfortable. He felt that his body was stuck, but little Jiang Shui did not want to let go, so he could not use force. With his strength, how could little Jiang Shui withstand it? This girl was too clingy. She was treating him like a toy. Zhou Xuanji twisted his upper body into a more comfortable position and said, "When I grow up, I will bring you to a human city. We will live in a big house." Now that he was already a foundation-building cultivator, he could live comfortably in any empire. However, he had to wait a few more years, until the empress thought that he was dead before he could leave. Only 4 years had passed, which was nothing to the great Zhou Empire. Actually, it's not bad here. Little Jiang Shui pouted and said softly. Ever since she met Shenhua and the Yellow Gust 17 fiends, she felt that humans were more terrifying than demons. Zhou Xuanji comforted her, "Don't worry. Even if we go back, no one will dare to bully us." Far away, beside the pool, Xiao Bailey, who was cultivating on a tree, frowned slightly. He sensed a tinge of murderous intent from Zhou Xuanji's tone. Who does this brat want to kill? He had the intention to take revenge at such a young age. He did not know if it was a blessing or a curse. Xiao Bailey was a little worried. He even had a premonition that the world would change because of Zhou Xuanji. In the next 2 months, Zhou Xuanji would bring little Jiang Shui out for adventures every day, so that she could practice fighting. At night, Xiao Bailey would teach little Jiang Shui some basic spells, such as the fireball spell, water-repelling spell, and wind-summoning spell. In the blink of an eye, little Jiang Shui broke through to the 5th level of qi nurturing. Zhou Xuanji's cultivation did not break through, but his strength increased significantly. According to Xiao Bailey's estimation, this little monster's physical strength had already reached 17,000 pounds. If he used the golden body incantation, his strength would increase even more. This day, Xiao Bailey prepared to leave. At the entrance of the valley, Zhou Xuanji asked, "Why are you leaving early?" Xiao Bailey smiled as he stroked his long beard. He was dressed in a white robe, and he looked like an enlightened cultivator from the mountains. He said with a smile, "If I don't leave, how can you focus on your cultivation? Zhou Xuanji grinned and did not reply. With Qiu Beili around, he could not take out all his legendary swords. One must have a trump card. I have said what I need to say, so I will not nag anymore. Just one thing. Qiu Beili rubbed little Jiang Shue's head with a kind face. He turned to look at Zhou Xuanji and said, "Keep your guard up." After that, he turned around and left. A flying sword flew out from his sleeves and circled around his body. It flew to his front, and he leaped onto the sword easily. Zhou Xuanji, I hope that the next time we meet, your name will have spread across the world. Don't tell anyone about our friendship. Swoosh! Qiu Beili left on his sword and disappeared into the depths of the forest. Little Jiang Shue's eyes turned red as she watched, and tears flowed down her cheeks. Zhou Xuanji also felt his eyes itch. This old guy is really something. He understood the meaning of Qiu Beili's last sentence. It was not that he despised Zhou Xuanji. He was worried that he would be a burden to Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji had no parents and only little Jiang Shui. Qiu Beili knew that he would have an extraordinary future, so he did not want to become Zhou Xuanji's weakness. Zhou Xuanji heaved a long sigh and activated the mechanism. The miasma rose again. Whoosh! Not far away, a big flapped its wings and cried. Small air followed behind it. Zhou Xuanji nudged little Jiang Shui with his shoulder and said with a smile, "Sister, let's go. I want to eat roasted rabbit tonight." Little Jiang Shui's tears turned into a smile. She rolled her eyes at Zhou Xuanji and said, "Rabbits are so cute. They won't taste good roasted. Let's boil them into soup." "No way, listen to me." Zhou Xuanji grinned and said. He waved his right hand, and the frost wave sword appeared in front of him. He leaped up and landed on the frost wave sword, then stretched out his hand toward little Jiang Shui. Little Jiang Shui pouted and looked reluctant, but she still stretched out her right hand. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.